5:03. Apologize for the delay, and I'd like to call this Board of Selectmen regular meeting for Wednesday, July 10th, 2024 to order. We'll start off with the first Selectmen's remarks, and I will start off by, and I will try to keep it brief, but I did want to remind everyone that the POCD is in progress. There is a survey out there that I implore everyone to take and to participate in and send in. There are both hard copies and online. It's online. It's on the website. On the front, as a matter of fact, it should be on the homepage of the website. So please take it. Just to give you an idea, after about the first week that we had the survey, we had about 70 respondents, and we have 9,000 people, over 9,000 people in here, but obviously some of those being children. And so we figure we should be somewhere up around 7,000 people who can take the survey. We had about 70. We are at this point up closer to 600. So we did do we made a little effort to get the word out there, and it's certainly improving. Love to see if we can get to 8-9%. Their usually target is 2%, but it would be great for Woodbridge just to demonstrate exactly how engaged our residents are. And one way to do that is to participate in this survey that will actually go toward developing our plan for the next 10 years. So it's something that's important and something that I think would be very valuable from our perspective as we move forward.
Did the extension, was that extended?
Ah, thank you. Good point. And that hasn't been extended until July 12th. So it is available to be done until July 12th. Thank you very much for mentioning that.
It's good to know.
Also, as most folks know, this is tax time, so I'm seeing a lot of people coming here in town to pay their taxes, and I'd like to thank our residents for that. We do have a very good rate in terms of that, and it's obviously due a lot to the efforts of the tax collectors, but obviously to our residents and in their willingness to do so as well. I also wanted to mention quickly, just a quick update on Lucy Street. I have been meeting with a number of different groups and individuals, including the owner, the potential owner, the residents, and others, including Chaffa. I will continue to do so, and I will at by the next meeting have a more in-depth, probably before that, send you some information with regard to a more in-depth indication as to where we are, some of the things that are being planned. But just to give you an idea, where one of the considerations is for us to put with the consent and cooperation and participation of the existing owner, an RFQ, a request for qualifications that would outline different organizations that they would provide us their qualifications for operating a development such as the one we have, and the current prospective person who was looking to get the lease assigned to them would be included in that as well. But there's more going on. I'll be meeting with Chaffa hopefully next week. I'm waiting to hear from them to get some additional information, and we'll be submitting some more information as well. And we'll try to get that RFQ out before the end of the month. The summer concerts are in place. I want to make sure everyone knew Tuesdays, and there's 5 of them this year instead of 4 of them because there's 5 Tuesdays this month. There's 2 of them. The second one was yesterday. I attended. And it's interesting because you realize once you're there, there's a lot more shade than you think there is. So if it's a warm night, there's more shade just because of where the sun goes, and it's a lot more pleasant than you would think. Yesterday was a very warm day during the day. I went out there in the afternoon with a nice breeze, and it was a really pleasant thing to do and a really pleasant place to be. So please consider that. So with that, we will get started with the next item on our agenda, which is the emergency contingency plan for elections for Woodbridge. And here, to do this is both Pennell Hamilton and Anna Dickerson.
Yeah, we're a popular duo.
They're a pair, yin and yang.
That's right. I'm just going to say a few words and then, entertain any questions. So, we're required under state law to maintain an emergency plan for voting. It basically, the Secretary of State produces a model plan, and we're highly encouraged, and we do simply take that and make modifications to it where necessary. The current plan, there was a plan before this was approved at some point, and I'm really not sure when, before my time in the Registrar's Office by the Board of Selectmen. it is required to be approved. We made some changes for early voting, so we thought it was an opportune time to bring it back in front of the board. Changes, by the way, which included mostly writing or early voting in several places in the current plan. And the last thing I'll say is the plan really covers a broad breadth of things, from as mundane as what do we do if we run out of ballots to what do we do if there's a nuclear disaster. So, take any questions if anyone.
Really, that's like AMA level planning.
Well, what we do in case of a nuclear disaster is we follow the town plan,
Which
which is,
duck and cover. I don't know how recently that plan was updated either, so, I have a little note in here that I have to get it, because usually I give a copy of the town plan of emergency to the moderator.
yeah.
In case that this doesn't cover something particular, then that plan has to be followed.
Yeah,
So
this plan goes
I
into
just
the
have to
moderator.
check the dates on the one that I have, make sure that's the most
And
recent one.
we have used it in the past. I mean, one time, I was before my time, but the gym became unusable, and they actually moved the stuff out into the parking lot per the plan and
I was there for that
The
one.
continued the election.
The voters are really excited to see that they can vote from the sidewalk if necessary.
Although actually, the backup places are here, and the library meeting room are two official backup.
Thank you.
That was a short-term thing. The fire alarm went off, so while that they investigated that, we had to go outside. Were you there that time, Sheila?
I was
Okay.
working.
So questions, David?
No, I'm glad to see it's been updated. And these plans are really, because on election day, it's the moderator who's running the election. So they have to initiate, they have to instigate all the,
Yes.
they
Well,
take the plan, they
yeah.
tell everybody what to do. And so they really are in charge. They're the ones who have to really know what you're
I mean, Woodbridge is
dealing with.
a little different than a lot of, like in New Haven, they have 21 polling places.
Yeah.
So the registrar sits in their office,
Mhm.
and then the moderator runs the election. Here, we sit over there. The moderator runs the election, but we're also there too. So if there's like an emergency, everyone's on, there
Sure.
to do something. But
Any other questions?
I'll make the motion to adopt the emergency contingency plan for elections as revived on February 14th, 2024, and presented here today.
Second?
Any questions, comments? Thank you for taking the time to do that. And hearing no more questions, all in favor? Aye. No nays, it's unanimous. Thank you very much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope we don't have a
See you in
nuclear event.
November.
Yeah. Well, if there's a nuclear event, I'm not really sure I'm going to follow this plan. I think I'm going to get as far away as possible.
So the next item on our agenda is a bid waiver request to use state contract for paving. Warren Connors is here to give us some additional information and answer any questions the board might have. And Warren, we will ask that you speak into the mic. Thank you.
I can hear it. I think you received the memos for both requests, one for the road reclaiming and one for the asphalt and the application of that material. They're both under the state contract. There was some difficulty getting that this year because the state did not update the website, and I had to place a phone call, and then I was provided a link and got the information necessary because the contract is the same, but it expired in February of this year. And so the vendors knew what their bids were, but I couldn't use that as documentation to submit to you. So I reached out to the state and I got updates, and in the memos, the expirations of those contracts are provided. The unusual side of things this year is cost rose dramatically in both areas. We originally had 9 roads tentatively selected for this year based on last year's costs. And to my surprise, things have changed under the guidelines that which were never enforced under the state contract. They call them moves or skips, however you want to refer to it. And so the quantities that we used to blanket under the town as a project for doing our work got broken down. Materials are now costed out by the quantity per the road. If you have a certain distance, usually it's a mile in between projects, they have significant charges, but the cost of the material inflates if you don't meet a certain quantity. So that inflated the cost of the asphalt. And the same thing kind of
Warren,
late.
to what degree?
I'm sorry?
To what degree did it inflate it?
I would say probably 200% in some cases on the cost per ton. It went from, we were paying $98.25 roughly last year per ton, and certain roads this year we're gonna be paying $196 plus. So,
Are we able to mitigate that by just adding roads or miles?
no, because, well, but if they're within a certain distance, if you exceed that mile, now the parameters, and it depends.
Okay.
After the mile distance, which they'd normally have a clause in the contract to pay for each piece of equipment that mobilizes, that would be a significant cost. But the cost of the product being applied to the road inflated based on the quantity that's going down on that road. So if it's within the mile or exceeding the mile, the price per road is gonna change. Now, with me keeping that in mind for next contract that comes around, we might have to say, well, instead of moving all around the town, doing a little bit of work, we're gonna only do it, consolidate it in one area. I don't feel that's fair to the residents because everybody's a taxpayer and you wanna do what you can and where the need arises. But it's kinda
So,
restricting me in some ways from a cost perspective.
so we may need to relook this as an overall basis as to how best to deal with it in the most cost-effective way. But right now, this is where we are, and
Right, well,
And-
in past years, they never implemented those factors. They,
Right.
like I said, they treated everything as a project and you, based on the amount of tonnage that you used. Based on the product, there's a difference in each product cost.
understood.
But this year, they're divvying it up and that kind of ballooned out the cost. The same thing with the reclamation. We haven't done full-depth reclamation in several years. We've done milling and filling, but the roads that we have now they have to be reclaimed. So it requires 2 layers of asphalt, and the operation is completely different because you're pulverizing what's there, regrading and re-rolling it like it'd be a new road in essence, and then repaving it.
So, from our perspective, we're looking to waive the bid process to use a state contract.
Right.
But even with everything you've just told us, the state contract offers us our best opportunity.
I believe so,
Okay,
because the cost per ton is, you could go out to bid and hope that you're gonna get a reduction in services.
but there's nothing to indicate that that's the case.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was realized as well,
And
so.
like I said, the first phase of it would be to do the reclamation work. And I'm seeking a bid waiver for that for Garrity Asphalt and Reclaiming. What they did is they actually lowered their price from what this district area is because we've been a longtime customer. They're waiving the move fees and everything. And so they're giving us a break from their cost for this district. And they've
Okay.
been the sole vendor that's been doing our milling and reclamation work since we started a program. So
All right.
they work excellent with the town crew, and we don't get the extra fees tagged on to our costs. So that's why the recommendation would be to use them from the state bid and follow their bid cost.
So let's start by seeing if there's a motion to move
Yeah.
forward.
I'll make the motion to forego the bid process and utilize Tilcon Connecticut Inc. to provide asphalt pavement and application.
Is there a second? Second. Now, are there additional questions?
I had a quick question. So this is the full depth reclamation projects. Is there also going to be milling and paving of some
No.
roads? So this is
No.
the only thing we're doing this year?
I gave a tentative plan to Mika and Tony from discussion purposes to see where we might be headed this year and into a couple years out.
Yeah.
But those were based on costs that I previously had in place. And now that we have that, I had 9 roads tentatively selected for this year. We're down to 5.
Okay.
So it's
So
significant.
another impact of these rising costs are
Correct.
we're also not going to be doing that milling and paving, which sort of gives
Well-
longer life, right?
Well, no, it won't give you longer life, but first of all, milling is taking the surface off
Right.
an inch and a half. We call it mill and fill.
Okay.
So you're taking the riding surface off and you're replacing it.
Yeah.
So with full depth reclaiming, you're taking the entire surface, the base material and the riding surface, and pulverizing it into the base material. You're strengthening the base material. It's regraded and profiled and rolled and compacted and everything else. And then 2 layers of asphalt, not 1, are applied.
Right.
So that has a cost in itself, just because you're doing double the work.
I guess then my only question is, in terms of getting the X miles of road that you're covering, the town roads, done, we're, even though we're spending more money, we're actually getting fewer miles. So I don't know how this works out,
Well-
because you're going to be replacing some of these
Well, you
roads
can
before we
take the
get to
cheat,
all of them.
we also do overlays where we could get
Yeah.
away with it. But
But not this year.
you have to look at the structural integrity of the road. And we've been kind of flip-flopping, doing a mix of everything.
Yeah.
But we've reached a point that these roads that are being selected, they're not really roads that you'd want to overlay. The longevity of the product that you put down, you're spending significant dollars, and you want some life expectancy out of the road. So if we went and did the alternative, we might only be looking at this to go back in 5 years.
Right.
And is that worth spending that kind of dollar without improving the surface?
Yeah. All right.
Andrea?
How'd you know? Warren, thank you. I am just, for maybe the public's benefit, but certainly mine, moving forward, you mentioned if we were that 1 mile kind of radius requirement for maybe avoiding those inflated costs. If we were to approach our road improvements regionally, as you said, is an option, that could be a method moving forward to reduce some cost, understanding it might not, understanding it localize really the work. But if we could get things into a rotation year after year, this region 1 year, this the next, or a few years later.
We've been trying to mix it up, and we have selected roads grouped together in one location, but then you have a move to another location. It's gonna make it more complex in how you wanna treat your road system. If that becomes the important factor, you're gonna have a lot of roads that are gonna go into worst-case scenarios before you can treat them, because if you're targeting a zone, if you will, and not moving on to treat the problems where they are. And it's a universal thing nationwide that you don't necessarily take the worst road first scenario to improve, because if you follow that parameter, it's been proven that you're gonna lose money rather than gain money, because if you have a road that's on the degradation curve and you treat that road with a surface treatment before it gets bad, you're gonna only do the surface, you're not gonna do the extra effort of double with the reclamation. So that's why we kind of look at everything on an annual basis, but there's a great need here.
Yeah.
I mean, if we solely look at mileage, we're not performing well as a community, because, and I know that there's parameters that we have to follow, and tax burdens and things of that nature, but I've always tried to maximize what we do, both with other alternatives as opposed to just paving. There's crack sealing and chip sealing, which we no longer do because you don't get the longevity out of that, and we had a lot of inherent problems associated with it. So I always analyze what we're doing, We have drainage we're putting in on one road. It's a short run, but we have to get the water off the road before we can reclaim it. And it's not even an asphalted road that we're treating. And I have roughly 8 miles or so, 10 miles of road in town that's not asphalt. So when we look at the spectrum of the thing globally as far as the community goes, we have to be a little bit selective. Yeah, if I could, I'd keep the work together. It was kind of a surprise when I looked at the numbers that were presented to me. Measurement-wise, we were right on. We're very close proximity. But when I find it, I selected a road, and we're moving down, we're starting up on Morris Road, and moving down to Bishop Drive. If I move down to Warren Road, which is a very short road, that move, even though there's no tonnage on that road because it's so short, but to make the move, we're paying a penalty because of the volume of asphalt plus the move. And it's their parameters, not mine.
Go on, I'm sorry. Keep
I
going.
reached out to them to try to see if we can study that, and of course, they have to escalate it to their administrative side and see. When push comes to shove, when we actually start putting the material down and we get a bill, we'll have to wait and see if they accommodate us.
To that end, that's what I was actually going to comment on, so good segue. Could I ask that we prepare, as you said, you already sent Tony and I some information, however, that needs to be revised. Could we ask that you attend a meeting October, November timeframe to review this prior to the next budget cycle, so we're in a better position to understand what we can expect in terms of what's going on, so.
Well, unless they change their parameters, these dates, if we're gonna follow this guideline, it's not gonna change until next year.
I'm talking in preparation for next year.
Yeah.
So,
But
just so.
the guidelines, the parameters are not gonna change. If they change them, we'll have that ability.
I think he means which roads you would do in light of the.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah,
Like,
that's, we always do
you
that
gave,
as
you
far
gave
as
us an
discussion.
assessment as to
Right.
what you could expect, like the roads you want
Oh,
to do and how
absolutely.
much.
Absolutely.
And we'd like, I think everybody could benefit from understanding that, and if we can get that information, if we can have you come in and
Yep.
give us that
Well,
information.
the roads that weren't done under this year's program, they're still on the table
Right.
for doing the same work, and those, I have the costs reflective under these guidelines for those roads. It's just that because my request went before the boards, and what I got approved was significant dollar amount if I reflect on past years. But
Alright.
when I plugged it in, and again, when I started getting the feedback from the contractors that do the work, and the product that's available, everybody's against the same thing. I don't know if anybody saw the register this morning and what New Haven's doing, and they have a significant amount more miles, but their roads primarily are asphalt. We don't have a mix down in those areas. It's primarily asphalt, but they're just milling and filling. So they're doing 43 or 46 miles in town, but they have 237 miles. But they got like $2.8 million to do it. So there's a difference between that community and ours, obviously.
Sure, understood. I'd just like to, for us particularly going into the next budget cycle, to get a good understanding as to what we're
I
talking
always
about here.
submit to
So,
Tony
That's what-
and
yeah.
for yourself ahead of time.
but what I'm asking is that you come in and we have this conversation again
Yeah.
after you've had the experience of what you're doing now. So,
Yeah.
thank you. David?
Yeah, so, first, Warren, thank you for your good work for the town.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. And so I guess, as I understand, you've gone from 9 roads to 5 just to keep within the budget you have. Is that what we're?
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, we're still under budget, and until we start getting material put down, when we start getting the actuarials, because there's a little bit of a variable, some of the roads
Sure.
are gonna require curb, and those handwork costs and curbing application and curbing material, they're at a premium.
Yep.
So they're factored in, but until we get to the actuarials, and one example would be, I might be able to look at Morris Road where it interchanges with Litchfield Turnpike, and I could narrow that section of the road as a cost savings measure. So, there's things that's something that we do ordinarily anyways.
We find it's easier to add a road if we have budget money left than to
Than to
run out of budget
run
and
out of budget and
have
stop.
half a road.
Right, if I can't cover the
Stop at
cost,
one
then
lane.
Right.
now I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna ask for a handout from you guys, But, yeah, we always stay, because we do have that opportunity, and Tony and I have discussed this for many years. if there's, we call it a reserve in the fund, if it's not spent, it carries over and we can apply it either in the spring of the following year, or maybe at the end of this paving cycle, we can tag it on at the end of the year. If we choose to do that. If we think it's in our best interest not to, we'll just roll it over and use that for funding for the following year.
So my question is, just based on your long experience and so forth, how are our roads, right, how is the condition of our roads right now compared to what they have been?
That's, my perspective is gonna be a little biased because I know what's physically out there. The users of the road, and one example is I had a resident come in today, and I had a call a month ago from somebody that lives in another town about the road that we're treating. And it's on the schedule, we're not gonna take it off the schedule as far as, you know, if the funding gets authorized. But we know the conditions of the road, but I could give you 20 more roads tonight, just write it down on paper without cost, but I could tell you those roads. The user of the road, their perception of rideability versus the structural side of things, they're two different areas. We get calls for people, there's a pothole in the road, and you go there and there's not a pothole. It's just a delamination, which is a 1-inch layer of material that's come off it didn't bond securely to the water or whatever,
Right.
separated the surfaces. We go out and we try to patch, but to chase those small areas town-wide, it's almost impossible. So perception, some of the roads we have, the main arteries right now, when they were done many years ago, the surface is spalling. So when you ride on it, you're gonna hear the vibration under your tires and you're gonna feel a difference in the ride, but you're not gonna be going through, let's say, like speed bumps or severe potholes. So it's perception on the user of the road. But we know that the road has some structural integrity, and that would take a different treatment than the full depth reclamation. But when we start adding those roads, because they're primary roads in town from our local arterial roads versus the state roads, they got significant traffic counts on them. And so if you want to treat them, but because of the length, the dollars are going to go up.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This work will be completed by April 24th,
No, we want,
2025, or?
no, that's when the contract expires from the state.
Okay,
We're trying to, if the board approves the request tonight for both, tomorrow I'll be doing a PO request for the vendors, and then once we try to get on a schedule with them. We have to adjust the catch basin structures, any of them that are not to grade for the new pavement, or if there's internal problems, we'll take care of those before we put the new asphalt down. We have those things to address as part of our pre-paving program. So that work would come first. Once that's completed, we can get them. Typically, they want to come in because they're very heavily engaged with other municipalities in the state. We probably won't get them in. I'm going to say it's probably going to be late September, middle September, and then
Start the job or finish the job?
no, just to do the reclamation, and then usually the paver comes in, he tries to stay on top of it, but they can't do anything until the reclaiming is done. And when that's finished, that will probably take a week or two at least. And if we don't get any weather in between that disturbs it, so let's say there's 2 weeks worth of work from the reclaiming, and then the paver comes in usually a week or two after that.
So by the
I would
October
say by
timeframe?
October,
By October
we should
timeframe.
be done.
Thank you.
thank you.
I get some questions. Are the piles that are in the Woodbridge Country Club parking lot related to the paving?
Yes, those are previous years, the milling that came off the road.
Yeah.
And we're just taking the surface out. And because we don't have a footprint to store them, that's why the parking lot was used.
Uh-huh.
I've been trying to get them disposed of. They're not always available to give away. People don't want them. Some people take them, but with the work that's being done, for example, on Amity Road, the state is giving the material away. We give it away too, if there's a contractor that'll take it and haul it. But sometimes the people that want the material, they have to pay somebody to truck the material. So the disposal process, I know for a fact that the Danbury Tilcon plant can have the material, but we're not gonna pay to have trucks run to Danbury with a truckload of material. It's not cost feasible. So we have to sit on the product until we can find alternate ways to dispose of it.
I see, so.
And we try to dispose of it in multiple ways, including maybe using it for other thoroughfares,
Usually,
parking
when there's
lots.
developments in other locations, people are using it as base material for parking lots. The asphalt companies themselves will take it because they recycle it. It goes into the new asphalt. It's a certain, they
Thank
call
you.
it RAP. It's a certain percentage of the mix. And the other thing is there's other sources where they have a use for it. It could be making coal patch. It could be, whatever they want to take it for. And
Certainly, we're taking into consideration that there might come a time where that parking lot's not available. So,
Or it may be full, there's a lot in there,
well,
right?
it is, but I would say that we've disposed of more than 50% of what we originally had there.
Okay.
So, and we ran out of, let's say, the seasonal aspect of things from last year, so the vendors shut down and we didn't have the trucking capability.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
So the motion was for for Tilcon, the first one that Steve made was for Tilcon and seconded by David. Okay.
No other discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor? None opposed? Thank you. Thank you very
How
much.
about the
Warren.
reclamation?
Oh, the
Second
reclamation.
one,
Thank you
yeah.
very
So
much.
these are separate because they're
No, we're not gonna do that one.
two processes. So I'll make the motion to forego the bid process and utilize Garrity Asphalt Reclaiming, Inc. to provide pavement reclamation.
Second. Maria, if you want.
Any other questions? Any discussion? All in favor? Now, thank you very much.
I'm also, now that we've got the approval, I'm gonna have the roads that we're selecting to post on the internet so that people will know what we're doing. And
Excellent.
like I said, Morris Road was one of them. I've had contact with about 3 residents on that road, so.
Are they happy? I'll tell you, I'm thrilled
yeah.
to know
Oh,
Morris Road is getting paved selfishly.
It's a funny thing because we almost have a target on our back because of the condition of roads. And it's not like we're doing a road and somebody right at the adjoining road at an intersection will say, well, my road's bad too. Well, that's where my dollars stop, so we have to come back next year.
Thanks, thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Warren.
Thank you. Warren.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warren.
All right, next item on our agenda is for us this discussion master plan update, and we will do so under executive session pursuant to section 1-2006E and 1-21024 for discussion of the CCW RFP response and financials. With that, I will ask that we will ask Nick Bamonte, Tony Genovese to remain in the room for that discussion. All others I will ask to adjourn until we complete. This is at 5:36.
A second?
All in favor?
5:36 p.m.
Thank you.
Love those wafers.
All right, thank you. We are back we have come out of executive session. There were no votes taken. I'm sorry, there were no motions made or votes taken. During executive session, we had a discussion as relates to the 2 master planning firms that are under consideration, Perry Associates and Cooper Robertson. Coming out of that discussion, during that discussion, we discussed both the technical aspects of the proposals that were presented as well as the financial aspects of the 2. And with that, we feel that it would be appropriate for us to, at this point in time, amend our agenda to also include action to be taken in this regard. So I'd like to make a motion that we consider amending our agenda and adding action to be taken on the matter of the CCW master plan. Sheila, is there any discussion? All in favor? Very well. And with that, we would like to taken action as relates to the CCW master plan and as relates to the two firms that we have been currently negotiating with and working with in terms of providing us with the master plan for the Country Club of Woodbridge.
So I'll make a motion to authorize First Selectman Mika Cardoza to continue discussion with the selected vendor Cooper Robertson regarding the RFP for a master plan on the Country Club of Woodbridge property.
Second.
Now, is there a discussion? One thing that I'd like to say is that it's been truly a pleasure to work with both of these firms. They were extremely responsive. They've certainly made it very difficult to make a choice. And I'd also like to add that I think there's a contingency on that with regards to moving forward, understanding that there are requirements associated with our grant that need to be considered prior to us taking any specific action. So just to clarify, what the motion is indicating is that Tony, myself, and the administrative team here at the town hall will work with these folks to continue the conversation as relates to what we're looking for and what's required. But there will be another requirement for another vote before we approve or before we move toward actually expending any funds.
So Mika, in terms of timeline, perhaps awarding the contract won't happen until August or September, or?
Correct.
So the public understands.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah, at this time, the motion is just to continue discussion with the single vendor for any step moving forward, including addressing any issues with the grant and making sure we're in compliance moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad you clarified what moving forward means. Because it's different than signing a contract.
Correct.
But it is moving forward.
Any other comments or questions? With that, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you for all for your consideration on this. All right, with that, we will move on to our next topic. We did check at earlier to see if there was anyone here for public comment. There were no emails sent, and there was no one present for public comment. So we are moving on for the next item, which is the consent agenda. All board members have received and reviewed the items on the consent agenda. Are there any requests to move any items from the consent agenda? In that case, I will ask for a motion to acknowledge and approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Maria?
Second.
Sheila, second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next item on our agenda is the Center School Building Committee update. Mr. Dwight Rowland is here representing the Center Building Committee, and thank you for your patience, Mr. Rowland.
No problem.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Dwight.
Vicky. I'd like to change the topic a little bit. I'd just like to let everybody know that our 12s team is playing for the championship Friday night up in, locally here, the Cal Ripken Championship.
Where are they playing?
Outside of Newtown,
Okay,
in Bethel. We're actually playing Friday night in Bethel.
thank you.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Congratulations.
Last year, this same team made the championship, lost in the finals to West Hartford, but we've won 3 straight, so we've got a pretty good shot of winning. So it's exciting for our league. So I just
It's
wanted
exciting for the town, too.
I just like it's exciting for us too. So it's really good. So
Dwight, would you mind just sending me some information? I'll see if we can get something out on that in
Sure.
terms of like the details where they're playing and what time.
Definitely,
I'd
definitely.
appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm planning to go up Friday night to watch it. I
Thank
went
you.
Sunday for their first game.
Great.
And it's exciting to see these group of kids coming together, playing really well, and they have an opportunity of a lifetime.
Thank you.
And if they win, well, then they go to regionals, which is gonna be held in Massachusetts, starting on the 19th. So it's exciting for the town. So,
Very much so, thank you.
okay. I'd like to give you a quick update where we are. As you know, in May, we gave you an update at the end of Phase 1, where we were, an extensive report on the center building. And then at that meeting, we were asked to go back and see what was required if we were going to move onto Phase 2 of the project after we did this. We met, we understand the $40+ million price tag is kind of chokeable. You know, it's a very high price, but if we are gonna do the work within the center building, if we're gonna do it, we have to do all 5 phases, and that's what it will entail. However, our building committee had an idea, and we'd like to perhaps think outside the box and maybe look elsewhere for the renovation of the PD, and perhaps build a brand-new building off-site on town-owned property within the center of town, which would then allow us then to schedule and do smaller projects within the center building without that huge price tag coming up. So we were asked to look at the charge. We gave our amendment of what we thought would be appropriate to do that. So that's one item that we could discuss is we would need, if we are going to do that, we would need an amended charge. That's one. Number two is if that's one of the things you really want to look at, then we're going to need a brand new charge, because then we're going to have to form either a new committee, building committee, or a siting committee, so we can then select the site to where this could be constructed. I talked to David Stein. David just finished a brand new PD in Branford, in North Branford. I went up, as a matter of fact, I was up in that area today. I swung by it, and it's a beautiful building. It's roughly 15,000 square feet, which is essentially what ours need right now, PD needs. And the price tag at that time, it's just recently been completed. They haven't moved in yet. I think the construction was a little over 12 million, and the overall cost with bonding and everything was about 15 for a brand new building. So
15 million.
So I just like to, so if we are gonna, so our recommendation would be probably to think outside the box, look for a location centrally located in town that could house a brand new PD. So I'll just open it up for discussion. That's just,
I'm wondering, Dwight, thank you. So is it assumed that this would save us money? Like by building, I'm confused as to why we would take this approach.
if we kept with the program right now, with the way it is, keep everything within the center building, then the price tag, we would then have to absorb the $40+ million price tag going forward with that project. If we don't do that, we could then look elsewhere. PD definitely needs an upgraded space. They need the space. They're really shoehorned in to where they are. They're working in antiquated conditions. So one of the things we were thinking about is form a committee, find the site, build the building, and then when the building's done, then we can move them out. But in the process, we could also think about, the building committee could also think about doing smaller projects within the center building, which then we could phase accordingly, and you wouldn't have to do the entire thing. You could phase it. Phase it in without spending that amount of money.
If I understand Andrea's question correctly, it's, okay, so let's say 45 million is where you're starting. If we take the 15 million and we build the new police department, and we say 15 or 20 million for that, is there is the remaining 20 or 25 million that otherwise we would have put in to the center building, is it stays the same? Is I think what you're saying is the advantage is we have the flexibility now of stretching that out.
You could stretch
So,
it out for a
to-
lot
to-
longer period, you could bond it for a lot longer period, you wouldn't have to do it all right now if it was gonna be done.
But
The
you
one-
would
the one-
also be able to provide us, the building committee, working with whatever resources are necessary, identify what the costs would be for
Yes.
the remaining work
Yes,
that's there.
yeah.
So we could, at that point in time, analyze the implication of having a new building. But there are other benefits just from a
Which is
working
correct.
standpoint.
And then we can look at the use of, other uses of that building other than PD. Because once PD moves out, it'll open it up. We can either remove that portion of PD, which is no longer gonna be moved. We can demolish it, use it for parking or whatever. There are a lot of, and plus then, they were gonna take a lot of the space on the second floor of the center building, adjacent to human services. With them gone, that'll open it up to other uses that we can think about using for the town.
I would also add that you could, this process would allow us to more easily schedule the debt service for various projects, to wait until some projects are paid off before other projects are added, and to work also, because we have another project that's being reviewed at the school, so we can better schedule these projects as opposed to having one $40 million project to $45 million. That's an added benefit.
It'll be smaller, it'll be a lot smaller projects we can manage
Yeah.
and do that. And we can look for grants and all that for those as well during that time period.
But your ask, if I'm understanding correctly, is for us to allow the charge of the committee to change so as to consider a new building as one of the options, if you will,
That's correct.
for how we go about.
So it wouldn't be the route we would take. It's
It's
just giving us more
evaluating.
information to determine, do we proceed with what we were presented with in May or some version thereof? Or do we explore this?
Correct.
Yeah, the original charge asked Dwight's committee to provide us with what it would cost to deal with the renovations in center, and they've done that. And one of the issues you come up with is when we're doing that, we've got the police and human services in there. And so once you start, you've got to plow right through and get it all done. And that became this $40+ million project, which involved also, how do you keep the police department running while you're renovating a building? So they have to move, and then the human services have to move because the police had to move, and then you got to move those people back. So you're going to do it in pieces, which is costly.
Sure.
So the idea is that with something for us to consider as another option, perhaps for a lot of other reasons, technical reasons, we may save money doing it differently, but this other option may give us both a better way to do it as well as a better way to finance it, and maybe even some cost savings. So it's a good thing to look at from our perspective.
So tonight, the change in what the committee is going to work on is going to result in just you doing some study and then coming back to us with the data to say, here are the options, here is what the real cost savings might be. If we can phase it, as Tony mentions, we have to figure out
Well,
how
we
it
don't
fits
know
in
what
debt
the
service.
phases, we don't know what those options are right now.
Right.
And if we were gonna go ahead and look to do a separate building,
Right.
we would then
What would
have
that
to
look
go out and do an RFP for another architect, for an architectural firm, unless we're
And
gonna
you need a
use-
different building committee probably as well.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, but
Yeah.
my opinion is it wouldn't be the same building committee.
Right.
You would do a separate building committee for the new building. You would form a siting, you'd charge them with locating an architect, go out and finding a site, come
Like we
back
did for
with
the firehouse,
recommendations.
right? That
Yeah,
was the
as we,
process.
exactly with the fire, I
Yes.
was on that committee.
Yeah, yeah.
I was the chair of that committee, so I know I went.
So I'm trying to understand this in terms of our strategic plan. We had talked about these projects perhaps falling under the umbrella of a standing building committee that might take a recommendation. So it sounds like tonight we would be empowering them to pull together a proposal that would then, when it comes back to us, perhaps go to a new building committee that is maybe the building committee for the town.
And just for, it may be semantics, but maybe a building commission for, as opposed to building committee.
Yeah, a commission that's looking at all the needs, including how to phase in the costs and
Townwide.
everything else, yeah.
So that would be an appointed, we'd go through the process as we have for all of our other boards and
Ordinance.
commissions.
There's an ordinance required, correct?
So we'd,
Yeah.
we'd
So
have
that's
to go
the
through the
part
ordinance
envisioned.
process,
Correct.
but when it comes down to who's serving on the commission, it would be the, okay.
Yeah, and that's what we talked
Exactly.
about in the strategic plan, but it sounds like tonight, we didn't have this wrinkle when we were looking at the strategic plan, but this fits with what we would want to do in the strategic plan, so, seems logical.
Did you want to say something?
Perhaps it would be helpful if I read the amendment and then to the charge and then make a motion for any further discussion. So the proposed amendment is, the amended charge empowers the committee to explore the possibility of a new configuration for the police department and emergency preparedness. The committee will explore the probability of constructing a new police station within the proximity of the town center and will work within the plan for conservation and development. This scenario will result in reconstructing the use of the existing spaces within the center building by repurposing aspects of the original building and/or contemplating removing portions deemed underutilized or past its useful life. The committee will then be empowered to explore a long-range plan for the phasing of this work in more manageable phases. So that's the amended proposal, and I'd like to make a motion to approve and adopt the amended charge for the Center Building Renovation Committee.
Second.
I would like some greater clarification on some of the language included in this proposed amendment before voting on accepting it
Can I
as
actually
is.
make a couple of suggestions to
Yeah.
kind of clarify and then make sure that we're correct with this? So, probability, maybe you want feasibility there,
I
Right?
prefer- Yeah.
because let's not apply probability.
Possibility is a better word, but that's how it is in our packet
Yeah,
right now.
so if
I
we
wanted
could change it
that's
to,
all.
so friendly amendment, I guess, feasibility for probability, and then reconstructing, maybe you want reconsider the use of the existing building, because we're not authorizing construction.
Indeed.
And then I wonder if that last sentence should be there, because maybe what we need is for them to come back to us, and then we'll decide who's gonna do that last sentence.
Well, there's still the committee for the Center Road building. So
Yeah, no, and I'd be interested in seeing how this, like I said, dovetails with the strategic plan. If they could come back, I don't know if you have a time frame in mind, but the sooner the better, obviously.
But until such time as I would like them to consider, since they're engaged in it as it stands, they would consider a long-range plan until such time as we implement a commission versus a committee, individual committees.
Mm-hmm.
This committee can then input to that commission what work they've done. But
All right, so-
rather than saying that they shouldn't be, I would like to empower them to explore a long-term plan so that it can start now versus waiting until there's a commission.
Okay, so phasing of this work is both the center building work and the new building?
just the, I think.
Just the center
Well,
building's
the
phasing?
long-range plan is for the phasing of this work. Yeah,
This work being the center
the
building
center
work,
building work.
not the new,
Correct,
okay,
correct.
Because that would be a different building committee.
yeah, I think.
Correct.
Is it appropriate in this proposed amendment to consider adding language, like if a building committee were established?
Commission?
A commission, I'm sorry, to explore this separate police department building. I would prefer to know, so I understand there might be some short-term savings in construction costs, not needing to temporarily house a police department, et cetera. But what are the long-term costs associated with having yet another municipal building to maintain and heat and all the costs of services that fall on the taxpayers for that?
That
And-
needs to be part of.
That's
Yeah, so is that,
feasibility.
because that's not explicitly
Well,
said here,
I
unless
think
I'm
if we
missing-
changed feasibility, that's a
That would be
feasibility study.
inherent to that? Okay.
I mean, that's what a
I mean,
feasibility study is.
Yeah.
Then that would be great. My other question referring to this wording is new
I'm sorry,
police.
Andrea, just before you get into it, please remember that, because I think it's just directed toward the building committee.
Okay,
To
so,
make sure you understand what we're saying is that we, in addition to what it costs to build it, we want to know what it costs to maintain it on an ongoing basis. 'Cause
We can do that. We
To
can do
Andrea's
that.
point, I don't know that we've seen that all the time. you know what I mean, in terms of
No,
other.
I understand that.
So-
And, okay, we did it with a new firehouse when we built that. We spread everything out. We did the yearly costs or what it would cost for fuel and everything else.
Okay.
We did an average.
So,
Okay.
perfect.
So-
Thank
And it
you.
was part of the overall, I remember, Tony, I think it
I
was part of
remember,
the
yep.
overall bottom number.
That'd be great, thank you, Dwight.
I'm sorry, your second.
No, that's fine. I'm just wondering if we can define or maybe just help me to understand what we mean by the proximity of town center.
It's gotta be in a center of town somewhere.
So what does that mean? Within X amount of miles?
Well, I'm just saying is in town center, which is the Fitzgerald, other properties, somewhere around the area here,
So,
close to the, close to the center of town. I don't think you want your PD up at Acorn Hill or somewhere else. It's gotta be somewhere proximity so that,
so are we
We're
about
limited
to
in-
embark on the firehouse all over again where it was
Not
proposed
necessarily.
down the
No,
farm?
This is
Not
exploratory.
necessarily, because
Yeah.
there's a piece of property right here that actually might work very, very well.
What are you pointing to?
1115 Meeting House, this parcel all the way to the corner.
Okay,
They had looked at it at one time for a teen center in like 2002,
okay.
maybe 2001?
Kind of the area in between Public Works and the fields?
No, going this way, this parking lot here,
Okay.
all the way to the corner.
All the way to the
All the way
corner?
to,
Okay,
yes.
thank you for clarifying.
So
I
that's,
understand this is just exploratory, but
Right.
I'm
but,
just thinking.
yeah, the other options, if you're building a new building, are the options in the area, and there are only a few.
I know.
There's only, we're
Just-
over there in the corner, the Fitzgerald and this piece of property
Yeah,
here, so.
Hoffman.
Dwight, do you know if there's an additional cost right now to changing your charge?
right now, we don't have any money to go to phase two. So whatever we're doing moving forward, we have a building committee meeting next week, and we're gonna be talking with the architect, and we're gonna get pricing from them, a proposal to move forward with this. Whether or not we wanna consider staying with phase one and keeping everything in the center, or looking somewhere else. If we look somewhere else, then we need to consider whether or not we're gonna use the same architect who just completed a PD in Branford, North Branford, to use them to help us. Because thing is, we need to find an architect to take the needs of the PD, current needs of what they then, put it into a building shape and look at parcels in town that are town-owned that can fit their needs. Access in and out, especially emergency access and everything else. So it's gotta be close to a main road and everything else, so that's just something that, but again, that's architectural services that will have to be paid for moving forward. Along with phase two, if we're gonna consider looking at other options in the center building, again, that's not part of the cost right now for the architectural fees. We haven't authorized any money moving past phase one right now.
Has the Woodbridge Police Department been consulted about this potential, and do we have any?
They're on the building
The
committee.
chief is,
Insights?
the chief is part of our building committee.
Okay,
So he sits in, he heard about the PD up in North Branford. He's planning to go up there and look at it. And as a matter of fact, the architect said if we want to go up and take a walkthrough, hasn't been occupied yet. This is something that, he's offered, he'd like us to go up
He
and
also
actually look
understands
at
no
it.
promises.
Huh?
He understands no promises.
No, but it's just something that he's just offered to see what it could look like.
I've driven by it. It's a beautiful building.
Oh, it is a beautiful building.
Yeah. What is the timeline with regard to looking to state and applying for state or federal monies to be put aside for communities, like for the police department, whether that's a renovation or whether that's a new building? Does that coincide with
So if we.
bonding timelines or?
Right, so if we have, it depends on the grant and it depends on the source of funds. Oftentimes, however, if we have a plan, the more
Prepared.
invested we are in the project, generally the better chances of getting a grant, because we're spending town money on a process, so therefore it's not like just an idea or some sort of, that we're actually want to see it happen. Oftentimes we can work with a grant, as long as we get the approval for the grant, the cash flow of the grant's not as important. Because we can
Right.
work with the debt
Okay.
in the timelines with the, similar to like a school construction grant. When we actually get the funds is not as important as knowing we're getting the funds.
Right, but not even so much for the grant, but just even, going to Deloro's office and asking if federal funds could be put aside for, I mean, I know they've done that
Sometimes
for.
that takes up to a year.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I mean, like, what is the timeline for asking for those types of things aside
Right.
from other grant opportunities
Right.
that might come up?
That just closed, correct?
Right. Like the
So
previous
there-
year.
So it would be for
For the next
following year would be
I'm gonna
the
say
soonest.
first quarter, end of
Okay.
first quarter.
Yeah, generally they come out in February-ish.
Okay,
And then you apply, and it used to be just a few months, but I think the last session, there was a lot of
Delay.
difficulty.
yeah, a little
Challenge.
bit. But this would all be good information to have ahead of that, so that we could be ready to do that or to make any funding requests.
There were opportunities, for example, we looked at as many grants as we
And
could.
they received a grant for that police station.
Yes, I think they did.
Yeah,
Yep, I think
yeah.
I saw that
So,
which is why I'm
Right,
Why I'm
you're
asking.
Yeah, yeah.
and some of the grants do require that you have plans.
Right.
That,
Right.
that's what they're looking for, so, as Tony said.
Shovel ready, sort of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dwight, I have a question for you with regard to the other uses of the building and obviously the plan for the center building rehabilitation. There are things that have to be done structurally, but then there were things that we were going to do, for example, for human services. Is that, with this amended charge, and I know we have a motion here, but with this charge, you would also spend some time figuring out what among those things would move forward in the phasing that you're going to
Yes.
recommend?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just something that, if we proceeded with the overall project there,
Yeah.
then we would be locked into all 5 phases, because PD is gonna be the driver going to get it done.
Right.
Without PD and the driver, it opens up a lot more freedom for us to look at other options of what we can do. We can do the roof, we can fix the leaks in the foundation, we can do, we can plan it accordingly as needed.
Right, and I remember in the presentation that happened with the joint meeting with the Board of Finance, they were discussing things like, replacing windows, and that's very disruptive, but theoretically, there'll be more ability to swing people in and around, so maybe it'll be less
It'd be a lot
disruptive.
easier without dealing with PD. PD would stay where they are.
Yeah.
If the new building was gonna be built, and then we would just work in the center building itself.
All right, I just want to make sure that the needs of the other inhabitants of the building, I
No,
know it's
I
important that we
understand.
do
I agree.
PD.
I
Yeah.
definitely agree. And
Great.
it'll open up avenues for other groups or whatever to use that building.
After we finish
After,
renovating. Yeah.
right, yeah, after, right.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else? We have a motion,
I just want, I know it's assumed, but just on record to say that by exploring this option, it does not mean we are committing to this option. There's a lot to still be considered, thanks to the hard work of the building committee. And the potential would exist, should the building committee select one particular location in town to propose this, or will we have scenarios of all the options?
that's up to us, but chances are we're gonna get options. And
Yeah.
as part
Well,
of
this is the one, see, my recommendation, if you're gonna look if you're gonna do a separate PD building, that'll be a separate building committee. It would not be part of this building
Understood.
committee. And that building committee then would be charged for finding an architect, citing it. Once you have an architect on board, then the parameters of what the PD would look like based on the space needs. They would then go around, look at the sites in town, make some recommendations, and then we would come back to get it
You might
approved.
serve
We're
on
just
all
changing
these
the
committees, right, Dwight?
We're
No,
just
well,
changing
I'm
the
just,
charge. We're giving them the opportunity to provide us the information that's required for us to make a decision. The decision on here today is just on the charge. Isn't just saying, yes, please, go forward and do what you
Yeah,
gotta
not
do.
doing the same.
So when we give them an additional charge here, the architect and the process that they've gone through to get us the answer to what the original question was, which is how much is it gonna cost to fix center building the way it now is? And then I believe it was Board of Finance, maybe it was Javier who asked, well, you know, have we looked into what it costs to build a new versus that renovation? And so that question opened up this avenue of discussion. And it seems to me that they've got a lot of engineering and architectural detail, that they know what it's costing because what they're going to do. And that it certainly makes sense if this new charge is added, that they stay with that same architect to then give us an estimate. Because all we really have now are estimates. We don't have reality. We don't know what it's going to be when you put it out to an RFP. But to stay with that group so that the options that come back to us are kind of an estimate that we can then make a decision about. But that's going to cost some money. I mean, it's going to cost some money for that architect to work. Probably it's not a full project because we know that they've already done a police department similar in nature to what ours would be. So it can't be a full, you know, it's not a full big project to come up with an estimate. But in doing that, they know what they can how they can rework what our $40 million is. So I don't think we have to get too involved with getting new people. We just ask the same architect, but it's going to cost more money.
Tony, where would that money be coming from?
Depends how much it's gonna cost. And you're talking about the renovations to the center building, correct? You're not talking about the siting of a new facility?
Right, I'm just talking about giving us an option to talk about here at
Right.
the board table about whether we stay with just the center building and
Right.
keep going ahead with this $40 million project, or
Right.
whether we look to a different solution based on an estimate that we're gonna get. I think that's what we want, isn't it?
Right, we want information. We want options and
But
comparisons to
information
information.
comes with a bit of a cost.
Well, there's a funding request that has to come
Yes.
to us
Correct.
before you can
We have to get the
engage any
information, and then
services, yeah.
we'll put together a funding request, we could discuss it at that time.
So you're gonna be looking for, we can ask the architect for two prices, proposals. One is to, if the PD moves out, rethink and give us options of renovating the center building only without PD. And then give us the price, if you were the architect for a new PD, what would it cost to help us design, site the building, and, you know, all the phases all the way through construction. But what I would do is I'd get it through the siting, and in the estimating for that, we get that, and then we could then do that. We can split it up that
Right.
way.
I would think that we need like a feasibility study to come back to us to tell us, just ballpark what the options are. So not construction documents or anything like that, or even estimates, but just about this amount, and we've already said it tonight, about 15 to 20 million to do a 15,000 square foot separate building. And then, as Andrea said, what is the impact of running that going forward, right? So just pencil out the different options, and then we'll have a decision to make, and I think maybe the Board of Finance is involved in that as well, right? The funding
The
request.
funding request
Yeah.
piece, yeah.
I also think too, if within the option of moving the police department to a separate building, Human Services is in the center building, but, you know, if there's other town departments that could benefit from a home in that building, if the police were moved out somewhere else, you know, maybe that should be discussed, because that might factor into what the costs are to
We
create that
need to
type
know,
of
like-
space.
Like who? Like, would you move recreation into that, instead of PD on the second floor, would you move Woodbridge Recreation, that department up there?
Well, if you're gonna use all the
I don't know,
existing
I'm
square
just,
footage,
you know,
you
but
Yeah,
still
that's
need
just
to
something
spend
that,
41 million
but
to
we don't know.
renovate,
We need,
close.
if we're gonna need guidance,
if we
so we
demolish.
can give the architect proper guidance of what to
Right,
look
right.
at.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, that there might be an additional discussion about, you know, who else might need, or could benefit from the use of that space if that space was reused.
If you guys, if you could let us know what other departments may benefit by
Well-
maybe, if PD is not part of the equation, who else? Then we can
It would
look
be,
at that.
Dwight, speaking of the second floor being part of the center school, original center school structure, which would be renovated. So David's part of the committee as well, so.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is just ask David if you wouldn't mind, anytime there's a building committee meeting, giving us some indication as to where we stand and
Yeah.
what progress is being made.
Sure.
So that we can make sure that we're aware of it. But as Sheila said, initially, for us just to consider moving forward and spending money, what money we spend, we'll need to have some ballpark information
Right, I
as to,
understand that.
here's what we're looking at.
And that's just something that.
And even that, understand, is gonna cost, and we have a means by which we have a process by which to do that.
And then we do have a meeting scheduled for next week, so we can
Excellent.
bring it up with the architect and everybody next week.
All right?
We can start that process moving.
So by voting to move forward with this amended charge, there is not a dollar amount associated with that?
Absolutely not. There's not a specific, in order for them to continue to do what they're gonna do regardless, there's a charge. So,
A
but we're not
financial, yeah.
authorizing that yet, because we haven't gone through the process for
Okay,
that yet.
thank you for
But just,
clarifying.
but just so you know, whether they do that with the police, with new,
Separate or not?
charge or not,
Yeah.
for them to continue their work with the architect in
Right.
doing what we wanna do, there will be there's
And we'll make it
dollars.
clear, to them, what your thinking is right now is where you want to go with this.
Appreciate it.
And then we can move forward accordingly.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion carries, unanimous. Thank you very much, Dwight.
Thanks, Dwight.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Next item
Good
on our
luck on
agenda is
Friday.
our strategic plan update. If we all recall, last meeting, we did discuss the strategic plan. Everyone got a copy of it. The intent was for us to review it, see if there's any amendments, edits, or additions, things of that nature that you might want to take. So I'd like to have the discussion as relates to that. So Sheila, I'll turn it over to you to take us forward.
Yeah, so I know in our minutes that we just approved in our consent agenda, we had, at the previous meeting, we had actually taken a vote. But we did also say, it's a living document, and so if there are any changes, I hadn't heard from anyone about changes, but now that we've just had this conversation, I think we can maybe do a little bit of an update in that strategy 6, moving forward with the building projects. And the other thing that we envisioned with this strategic plan was that it was going to be sort of a touchstone throughout our meetings as we went forward. So this is a pretty good example of, we are hitting this right now in this conversation. And obviously, a little earlier in the meeting, we also talked about the CCW moving forward in accordance with our plan. So I think that the plan is still functioning 1 month out to help us explain to the public what we're doing. Are there things that people would like to see clarified?
I'd like to make a suggestion. I find it, in terms of a public document, my sense is that it's too long. And my thought is that what we might want to consider is a shorter version of it, that encompasses the goals and the strategies, but not necessarily the tactics. And the tactics is something that remains on our document from a working standpoint, but not necessarily as this is what we
We don't
put out
expect people
there.
to read every word.
So, exactly. So if there's questions and there's things, then there's something that we have behind it. But, I took the liberty of showing it to some people, and it's like, wow, you're gonna do all this? And it's like, well, it looks a lot worse than it truly is, because this is what we do, it's kind of what we wanted. But, to that end, I think there was a valid point raised,
So we could simplify, we could summarize and make a simplified version.
consolidate, yep.
But
Did
still
anybody
keep
say,
it.
no wonder your meetings are 5 hours long?
Yeah, did you figure it out?
I do
So-
think that that's a good idea to have on the webpage, a more
Executive summary.
executive summary, something that captures the, some kind of Canva creation of this. But I do think that there are people in town who are like, well, how are they gonna do that? And may want to dig deeper. So there may be a benefit to keeping both up. but I do think,
Oh, we have to.
someone who pulls this up might look, oh goodness, I'll have to read this later, but I think if there was a summer,
Executive
Summary.
an
summary.
executive summary might be helpful to highlight the bigger parts of it, but
Yes. All right, challenge accepted.
It also,
And I would just offer,
Challenge
you know,
indeed.
graphic design challenges.
Yeah, yeah.
one of the ways
No,
I could
it's-
see doing that is just, if this were a spreadsheet, collapsing the tactics.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
a simple.
That's actually-
simple
Yeah,
piece.
that's what,
that's
You know, you can open
right.
that up or look at them or not,
Right.
but
Well,
so that.
luckily, it's
simple-
built in a way that I
So I
can
thought it might
easily
be.
do that, yes,
Yeah.
that's why it's so strangely built. The other thing I would say, if you guys think this is a long document, I'll just take a second to draw your attention to the Plan of Conservation and Development, the current one, 2015 to 2025, so rapidly concluding. The back of that document, if you take a close look at it, has a 19-page action agenda. And the Board of Selectmen is indicated in various places of doing things. So it's very similar to, it's a grid approach with, tactics and strategies labeled differently, so it's goals and actions. I'm very interested in figuring out where our current POCD matches what's our strategic plan right now, with the thought in mind, we need to provide some input to the next POCD, and it hopefully will be in tune with the strategic plan. Not an exact copy, obviously, not everything is part of the POCD that's in our strategic plan, but where it does match up, I think it might benefit us to look back and see what the previous POCD envisioned for the Board of Selectmen to be focused on. We might find some things that we say, oops, we need that in our strategic plan. Or we might just be able to better communicate when the time comes to TP&Z as they're getting ready to make the next POCD, which will have 10 years' worth of actions for us to consider as well. So I know that's also a long document, and I don't know how many people actually read it, Mika. To your point, we need a more digestible version. So, yeah, I can see.
The other piece that's important from my perspective is that we start regarding this on a somewhat regular basis so that we can structure our agendas and our our
5-hour
long meetings
meetings, yeah.
toward meeting some of these goals and objectives. One of the areas that I felt, the other thing that I just wanted to talk to the board about specifically is, from my perspective, I've always indicated, I think most people understand that I guess a lot of folks would consider me a housing advocate. And housing, I feel, is an important element of our strategic plan, particularly where our financial goals are concerned. And I say this particularly as it relates to the business district, where I believe mixed use and the opportunities for additional housing in that area may stimulate that area in such a way as it enhances our ability to have businesses and business growth in that area. And I don't see that highlighted enough in this to make that that necessarily demonstrates it as a priority. From my perspective, it's something that I think is important and that we need to be looking at, consider, and recognize as being something we need to do more work on. And that includes working with zoning. I did attend the zoning meeting. There was a housing person who was there. He was more of an affordable housing person, obviously, but nonetheless, I intend to go to more of their meetings specifically to see what we can do from what we need to do from a zoning perspective to make ourselves to put ourselves in a better position to grow. To grow, particularly in our business district, but in other areas if the opportunity presents itself. So I wanted to offer that as well.
So Mika, so I understand, so in our strategy 1, tactic B, we have request recommendations from EDC and TBZ regarding the expansion of the business district workforce housing goals and other zoning updates necessary to achieve goal 1, which is the economic stability of the town, including a new Main Street concept. So do you think that we could add some language here, or is that enough to say that we would work with EDC and TPZ for zoning updates necessary to achieve these housing goals in the business district?
I'd like to see more. I'd like to see something that's more specific toward the goal of leveraging that as an economic driver.
So is the first step, though, getting the recommendations from EDC and TPZ, or do you want us to have the how do we want to
No,
proceed?
it's a good question. The way I see it is I think we need to play a more active role. In other words, we need to provide additional direction and identify and have some dialogue ourselves and understanding ourselves as to how we can best approach this.
So is it a joint meeting maybe with EDC, TPZ, and us at a, upcoming Board of Selectmen meeting or a special meeting?
Whether it's all three or whether it's one and then one, yes, it is. I'm looking at us to play a more proactive role, to be better suited to identify and understand. Now, from a First Selectman standpoint, I'm reaching out to brokers, as I told you before. I'm reaching out to property owners. I'm reaching out to business owners. When something's for sale, we're talking to the folks who are involved in that to see in asking if there are if there is interest, what the interest is. We're looking at, EDC is very much engaged in that in terms of, potential tax credits and things of that nature. So, I'm working on that, and one of the areas that developers are very interested in is, I can put residential above these places here. Well, that offers me a different opportunity than I otherwise would have thought. I'd like to do more of that. I'd like to formalize more of that, or
Right.
make it known that that's activity that's taking place.
And is
So-
that, the way you formalize that, though, is by having the recommendations come in front of us so we could either endorse them or authorize something, or, zoning regs have to be done by TPZ.
Totally understand
Right.
that. But
Tax abatement is maybe ordinance
this is
committee.
activity that's taking place. This is what I'm doing. But it doesn't, and it seems like I'm doing it without necessarily, I don't think it's, on the way we have it worded right now or the way we have it presented, I don't feel that activity, there's nothing I can put down on here that indicates that that's happening, the type of
Well,
thing.
unless we ask them to come and make those recommendations. So I know that business tax abatements, that's been talked about by EDC for like over a year.
Mhm.
And they've been talking about them and saying that they're going to bring them to the Board of Selectmen. Let's invite them and give them a date, and then maybe we,
I can make that happen.
yeah,
I can make that happen.
yeah. Because
You
you are.
Any other
It
thoughts?
sounds like you
Yeah.
want a tactic in here that matches what you're doing.
In a sense, David, yes. Even a strategy in here that matches as a strategy.
Strategy,
That the
okay.
first selectman or town leadership will, or town representatives, however you want to put it, are actively, engaged in the community as relates to residential and business growth.
In the
know.
business district.
I think
I
that's
think
fair.
that's a little more general.
In the business district is fine, but
That's
Andrea,
strategy
if
one.
there's an opportunity to do it in another area, why wouldn't we
Yeah,
look at it?
I just, because
You know,
we've been
so-
talking about the business district, so I just
I am
wasn't sure.
focused on the business district in terms of that area because I do feel
Maybe they
that's a
wanna move
difference
it up
maker.
to A instead of
Right.
B or
So-
Yeah.
something.
So
And
strategy
it's a
one,
lot
though,
less-
I'm sorry.
Controversial?
Or it's easier to manage.
Yeah.
And zoning, that's where zoning is probably, more feasible.
Mika, in that, would that include, because one thing that may be represented in this strategy, but maybe isn't explicitly, is we have several businesses that have been vacant for years. They're not mowing the lawn, and it's not a good look for many reasons, or financially beneficial for us. So, in which tactic are we maybe targeting those business owners to incentivize investment and growth where there's vacancy and need? It's looking desolate, and
Tactic E, strategy one.
E, request recommendations from EDC. So that's tax abatement?
Abatements and other incentive programs.
Okay.
Beyond that,
That we
again,
can act on, but
Yeah.
things that TPZ needs to act on, or the zoning enforcement officer needs to act on, those are not for the Board of Selectmen.
Understood.
right?
Understood.
But what we can act on is, incentive programs or abatements or something. If we need to go to ordinance, then we need to act to do that. And I think that, Mika is out there asking people and collecting information, and I think it just has to get through us and to the right place so that it happens.
And it's not like I'm trying to create a tactic just because I'm doing something, it's because I'm spending a lot of time on this.
No, that makes sense.
And I think it's very important work. Along the lines of what you said, one of the brokers that I spoke to is specifically, I think, what you're referring to there. It seems as if there's some activity going on there that might bear some fruit right now. Certainly too early for me to say anything as far as that's concerned, but I'm hopeful we can say something soon. But the reason to reach out to them was very specifically because of the condition of that property. Something needs to be done regardless.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if they're that close, then I understand, give them a little time. But so yes, that's one of the criteria that I'm using in terms of trying to find a way to stimulate the area. So, and that's something that I'll get more information on.
And just to follow up on a statement you made referencing the July 1st TPZ meeting.
Yes.
I haven't finished watching it, full disclosure. It's still up on my window though, and I plan to. But I heard David. Thank you. And is that the person who spoke that you were referencing
Yes.
before? Okay. I think it is important, your suggestion is important, and I support adding that to this. And I heard him say with respect to housing, and I thought it was general, this was a general statement, is go slow. Go slow in your pursuit. I think in part, I understood it to really get the information you need to make the most viable decisions, right? And so that's part of that. And so I wanted to make sure that we're referencing the same.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Thank
That was
you.
the discussion, and he was the subject matter expert.
Yeah, and I think this complements that approach because it's doing our due diligence to make informed decisions.
Right. I just feel
With
like-
that being a focus of a need that we're.
And that's, I think, what I'm getting at is I do feel it needs to be something that's at least indicated on there, that is prominently indicated on there, because it's also something that's very feasible, if you will.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's not something that's gonna happen automatically, and it's something that we need data to make sure supports doing it in the right way.
Because he's a SCROG consultant.
He is.
And so I think that's that's a valuable source of information.
SCROG is, for me, it's been invaluable
Yeah.
in terms of the resources, not only in terms of what they provide, but also the interaction that I have with the other first selectmen and mayors. It's really been very, very helpful from my perspective.
Can I ask a question about the 2030 task force and how we envision their involvement in this particular effort? Is that one of the groups that should come and make recommendations to us, or do they not?
I've talked to them about that already. Yes, it is, and I realize this group, and I'm sorry we haven't done it already, to be quite honest with you. But yes, we've been waiting to see if we hear, and there is some communication going on. We haven't gotten the hope that we have that we've gotten. There's some information that needs to be exchanged along those lines, but.
Is this the connectivity grant? Is this
Correct.
that one? Okay.
Correct.
Right.
So,
So
but
we
I-
don't have news on that yet,
Lots
but
of great.
are there other things aside from that, or is everything really, all the eggs are in that basket for 2030? Yeah.
There's more, because this is just the transportation side of that.
Right.
And there was also, what's the other piece of it called,
Visioning?
Tony?
Placemaking and
Placemaking, yeah.
Placemaking
connectivity,
piece of
yeah.
it as well, so
placemaking,
there's
yeah.
more. So
Tactic A.
we can have that done, and that speaks a little bit to our last item on our agenda in terms of having different boards and committees come in front of us on a regular basis, scheduled basis, specifically to provide input and report on what their activities are. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but 2030, if they're not on there, we can have them put on there.
Great. All right, well, if anyone else has any suggestions, I'll work on a abbreviated version of this that's more suitable for, and then if people want to go deeper.
I would just like to clarify what we're going to do with the strategic plan in terms of, we've adopted it. We had the opportunity to talk about it here, about what changes maybe we think we want to do, and there's some little nuances there, but we talked in the planning phase about how this could help all of our boards and commissions with their own direction, because they would know where our strategies are leading us, and that you can kind of pick out throughout the strategic plan various commissions that might affect. And how do we plan on getting that information out to them?
I'm gonna plan to go to the meetings with the strategic plan as the agenda item on their agenda.
Okay.
Additionally, if we can get them, we're gonna start getting some of them in, as we'll discuss, getting some of them in, we can discuss it as an entire board with them when they come in front of us. So
And-
it'll be a combination of the two, David.
Yeah, and just in terms of process, will you kind of highlight those tactics that affect them as for each group, or?
Yes, and I would love input from the board in terms of saying, oh, this is a great one for EDC, this is a great one for conservation.
I also think it could be helpful to distribute the strategic plan to employees and department heads, so they understand also where the board is.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's another really good idea, I agree.
Can you just clarify, I know you've said this in the past, but are these ranked in order of priority?
No,
Okay.
we really have them, we started with the financial stability and maintaining our infrastructure, but then added that kind of third leg of the stool. I would see them equally important. All three of these goals are, that's why there's only three goals.
And it's important also because something can become a priority.
Yeah,
and it
no, that
belongs
makes
here,
sense.
so, okay, okay.
I would hope that they weren't,
Yeah.
honestly, but
Yeah,
I
they're
just
not-
wanted to.
They're not
Thank you,
necessary.
though.
I
And
think
then-
financial is pretty important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, but all of these, it's so hard. And my feedback, which I believe I did make last month, is I am a big proponent of having climate resilience be very blatantly out there as if we are in agreement that is an important strategy for the framing what we do. This individual believes it is, but if that's not representative of the board, then let's talk about that. But if it is, then perhaps we can add that to a language of one of the goals. It could be enhanced quality of life and climate resilience. So I could see it being
Yeah.
added into the goal title of goal 3 or goal 2.
Okay, so in strategy 7, we've got the community resilience building, which was part of picking up what you said, right?
Yep,
So,
yep, and I did.
environmental
Yep,
resilience,
and
right?
implement climate change adaptation and mitigation practices. So thank you for adding that.
Yeah, and that community resilience building workshop that we did, it was part of the Sustainable CT program. It was actually a mini grant from them. And that summary of findings kind of gives people the basis. So I know the Sustainability Committee, I heard from someone on that committee saying that they're very interested in trying to kind of look into it and finding out what the role is sustainability. So I think it's really important that we make sure that they understand it's here because we place an importance on it. That summary of findings is a document they can start with, so they don't have to ask those questions all over again because they've been answered. But then when we have our other goals, I think maybe they're under that sustainability, focus on sustainability and the environment. But if you want
that's a
more,
strategy for a goal, correct? So I guess I'm wondering is promoting resilience to climate change, which is very broad, encompassing, involves reducing flood risk and infrastructure damage.
yeah, that's it.
Many things.
Community resilience. yeah.
Should that be included as a goal, like part of a goal in addition to a strategy?
Yeah, so I guess, again, this is a similar thing. We have here that we're asking for a review of current sustainability efforts with the thought in mind, let's build on them next.
Okay.
I think that the answer is we ask those groups to take a look and then come back to us with, okay, what should we do next? Does that answer the question? Like if the Sustainability Committee does a little analysis and says, here are the things that have to be worked into, let's say, every building project going forward. We have some recommendations. If they come back to the Board of Selectmen, we discuss them at a meeting. We hear from the public as well that we're discussing this. And then we take some action to say, okay, now we're gonna hand it to every one of the building committees and make sure that they're, you know, when they present on their project, we're gonna ask them about sustainability. Does that,
Yes,
Help?
procedurally, that does. I think my question is just as simple as, could we add the language to the, because we have all these strategies that are nestled within goals,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So just like, would it be worthwhile to add language to a goal
To the goal
that
itself. Okay.
includes
Yeah.
climate resilience? I mean, this might be nitpicky or a waste of our time, but that's.
Yeah, maybe it's if you look at that goal, 2, maintain and invest in infrastructure, take care of the town buildings, lands, and recreational resources, so that they are welcoming and attractive. Maybe you want more than welcoming and attractive, is that what we're saying?
I think that's a good place, if we're gonna put
Yeah.
it somewhere in a goal, I think that's a good place to put it.
Goal 2, I could see it
Yeah.
being represented in both goal 2 and or 3. I don't have a preference either way.
And it's probably in goal 1 too, in terms of financial stability. You
Yeah,
talked about.
you're absolutely right,
Right.
Steve,
So
yeah.
maybe, you know, we've talked about an executive summary. I think the climate resilience and mitigation and adaptation strategies are a driving goal of the whole plan, and I think we see it in various strategies, which Sheila's been pointing out, but maybe if that's noted in an executive summary,
Yeah.
it really is at the top, and it's the sort of driver of these goals, strategies, and tactics.
Rationale.
I think
That
maybe
works. Yeah.
shows that that it's there in the whole document, because I hear it's not in these top things,
Yes.
but if it's actually above that, that's
Yeah.
showing that that's sort of guiding the whole document, because it is infused in each of these
I think when we
areas,
started
but
out,
it's
we
not
tried to
spelled out.
keep
Thank
the-
you, Stephen.
Keep the goals a little bit more basic,
Yes.
generic, fundamental things. Everybody agrees we gotta keep the town fiscally solvent.
Right.
So that was a goal, and not the detail of the goals. Because those were what we were doing in building a strategic plan. There were strategies toward the big, obvious goals that everybody elected us for. And then we had tactics that were the way you get to the strategy. So the tactics were the smallest bit.
And those we've worked on, I would say you're right, the phrase after each of the goals, of the 3 goals, that's the original language that we started with.
Yeah.
We really didn't adjust it after going into the fine tuning, so maybe if we have, the executive summary could kind of play out the rationale a little bit more.
Thanks.
Huh? I've got a homework assignment.
Good. Bounce it off me anytime.
What's that?
Yeah.
Thanks again, Sheila and Dave, for your work on this.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is Administrative Officer, Director, Finance Report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a preliminary year-end projection for through the for 2024, and that's a estimated surplus of just under $1.4 million. Because that we have an $800,000 contribution to allocation from fund balance, that gives us an actual increase of our fund balance just under $600,000. Which leaves us at 15.46% of our annual expenses. So pretty similar to last month. A lot of these are repeat items that you'll see. Interest income is, of course, been there all year. That's $440,000 surplus in that account. Intergovernmental revenue is pretty stable at $256,000 surplus due to the Connecticut municipal revenue sharing account grant. I don't think we're getting that in this 25. In our expenditures, the new item here is the police. We probably have a surplus about $50,000 in the police, primarily due to vacant positions and some injuries in the police department. And generally, when you have vacant positions and injuries in the police department, you have a surplus in revenue in general and wages, but you have an increase in overtime, which is the case this year as well. So I always sort of wait to see where that balance is. And this year it generated a surplus of about $50,000. I'd say the other addition here that's new is the Woodbridge Board of Education is projecting a year-end surplus of anywhere between $30,000 and $40,000. And so I put 35,000 in there as a sort of a halfway point until we get their year-end financials. Those are some of the new items.
Thank you.
Okay. I sort of find it interesting that this particular year, if you look at our property taxes, we've collected, we had a budget of $51,084,342 for our property taxes. And we're probably have a slight surplus of about $20,000 there, which is pretty good considering it's a $51 million budget. So I thought that was a pretty good budget this year. So. And that goes to your comment about how people in Woodbridge pay their taxes and about it's a stable source of revenue for us. So that's why I mentioned that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions?
Tony, no word from Amity on their, what they're closing this year?
I haven't,
You have
no.
The last one in, okay.
I'm not anticipating anything significant, but I have not heard.
Move on to funding requests.
Yep.
Tony, can I just quickly ask, when Woodbridge pays its taxes, let's say property taxes, vehicle taxes, which, what percentage, if any, retains to the town versus going up to the state?
So
Or
property taxes, we keep all of it.
we keep all of it?
Yeah.
And so is there a fund, like, this is just based on our meeting with Warren earlier, do we allocate, like, put some of that, let's say, vehicle property tax money in a special fund for public works?
No,
or
so
road investment?
it's sort of double entry, double-sided bookkeeping. So
Okay.
we take the revenue in, we record the revenue, and we invest the revenue.
Okay.
And that's how you get your interest income. So, for instance, in July, we always see a large amount. I don't know if people just don't like owing the taxes or think they're due on July 1st, but the first week of July, we get lines out the door. If you were here, you'll see lines out the door. Even though the bill is due on the 1st, but you get 30 days to pay it.
Yeah.
So it's actually not due till the end of July. And then we'll get a whole bunch of people at the end of the month who pay like right at the very end.
Who actually read that it was August 1st.
Right.
Well, I'm one of the peoples who pay early, but that's because I don't want to forget.
Right.
I get the
Don't wanna
notice
pay
and I'm
interest.
just like, it's
So,
fear-based.
and so we manage the cash flow. The revenue is different than the expenses. The expenses is decided by the budget.
Okay.
So we basically
So we
commingle
don't
all
have
our funds.
Yeah.
And
Have you
it's-
ever thought about keeping some aside, like while we have road issues, for example?
you could keep a budget appropriation aside, but you wouldn't keep the revenue aside because I invest it. So
Yeah,
I like to
so
sort of
that's okay.
move it around and get.
So basically, if we want to do more roads, we
You
budget more
budget
money
for it.
for the
For it,
roads.
and then
And you increase your appropriation for that purpose. That's how I would do that. It's not a special revenue. Sometimes we have special revenue funds that we set up, like the senior center. It's a special revenue fund for some of their items. Recreation has a special revenue fund for some of their projects. These are long-standing revenue funds for specific projects. But generally, for capital expenditures, we have just a capital budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we for example, put money aside specifically for large purchases in terms of apparatus, trucks, fire trucks, and things of that nature?
We have, not for fire apparatus, we deal with those on a case-by-case basis.
But did we in the past have a savings account, so to speak?
Not really.
Okay.
No, we've had one for, we have one for Public Works.
Okay.
We do one for Public Works, but not for fire. It's a trade-off, creating a special reserve
Yeah.
versus,
Investing.
you know, then you give the direction to the reserve on the department as opposed to funding them on a truck-by-truck basis. It's sort of a control versus
Yep.
trade-off.
Do we
Thank you.
still have an open space reserve fund?
We do, there's about
Very small.
$70,000 in
I'd
it,
say 60, okay.
roughly.
Yep.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay.
Thank you.
Funding requests. There are two. They're from the previous year. The first request, gonna make this a little bigger here. $40,000 is a request to reserve funds for negotiations and related benefits.
I'll make a motion to approve funding request 2324-34 for $40,000 to reserve funds for negotiations and related benefits.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries, unanimous, thank you.
Okay, the second item is for your consideration. In the capital budget, we had funding for repairs to the tennis courts behind town hall here. And we had eliminated that funding. I guess you've received some indication that maybe those cracks are a little worse than we thought.
They're over an inch.
Yeah.
apparently.
So,
Court 2 is pretty rough.
so we thought we'd restore this because they get a lot of use and for both tennis and pickleball, I understand. And so that's what this request is for. It's the final amount of money left in contingency.
Last year's contingency.
Last year.
And are there any, I mean, there's only 2 requests here, but are there any other things we might need to use that money for?
You discussed a few of them this evening.
The roads and
The roads.
everything, the police department?
No, the
The architect for the.
yeah, architect for
design.
the center building and this plan for the country club.
Okay.
So some of the other possibilities. So,
And how did this come to fruition for the tennis? Like, where did this come from for it to be spent this way?
Adam, out of discussion, Adam bringing it up. Also, we had someone else go out there to see if we could, for another bid. And it was deemed at that point in time that it was necessary. We've had a couple of residents call and say that I've had a couple of residents call and say that they're in bad shape. And so I asked if there was contingency money available for this type of thing. And I'm not tied to this at all, which is the reason it's here as a funding request for everybody to consider.
you can certainly
and
use it
in-
for something else if you so choose.
Correct. Considering some of the discussion,
I'm curious to hear what others have to say.
we'll have to say,
You could just amend this and we could just amend the
I mean, as a
request.
tennis player who uses these courts, I am very well aware that this work needs to be done. And as a driver on the streets, I am very well aware that our roads need improvement, and so I defer to the board.
my sense is that certainly what they're doing at the center school is one thing, but also what we might need additional for the country club is another area where we can set aside this money for, if we don't do the tennis courts, but, and
Okay. You can just make yeah.
What's our time frame for making these changes, though, right? Because the fiscal year's over, but we have a little bit of leeway?
For the changes to this, if you want to change it for a different use?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just make your motion this evening to change the use, and I can, I'll apply the proper account numbers when I send it to the Board of Finance. I'll just, amend this if you want to change the use.
So this was something that was eliminated from the capital budget
Right.
request.
Right.
And one of the other things that was eliminated from capital budget request was any money for the center building committee
Correct.
to continue.
They have no money to continue.
They had no money. They had 114, was that their request, or was
Well, 250,000.
for the
Right.
next year?
Right.
And that was also removed. So,
Right.
so we're going to put money in the tennis courts, but we know we need to
You
put
need-
money
correct.
there
You
too.
do.
Because I think it's important,
And these were both sort of moving at the same time?
yeah.
So we had the tennis court information a lot
Did you
more
volley,
before,
or-
right? Well, we were creating the package and before all this sort of developed a little,
Yeah, well,
later, so.
I would just say that the center building, I feel pretty strongly that it needs to stay on some kind of track. I know it's not going to be on the track it was originally proposed to be on, but if we can move it forward, I'd like to spend money there. Or reserve it for that use.
What about then for the country club, as Mika said? Because
Well, that one, I don't know that, there might be a way to like backload that cost further down. If we get through the
There's more
winter again
flexibility
and we
there.
have contingency, that's a good place to be.
Spread over a couple of years.
And as going through the process with the 2030, what you start with sometimes is not what you end with. Because you may go through the process and think, oh, maybe if we have this information, or maybe we really don't need that information. That's what we found when we went through that process.
My feeling on this is the tennis courts are something obviously used, and they are used. If you, anytime you go by there, I'm sure you see people that are playing there. Pickleball has become very, very popular. I feel it's important from a town perspective that we demonstrate that we hear people and that we want to respond to their needs and provide them the services that they can feel good about and honestly and feel more proud of. So as critical, and I mentioned and I realize, for example, the country club, as you said, there's other options, there's other opportunities that we can do that, so that's less of a problem from my perspective. You know, the town's responsibility is to take care of our buildings, so we need to find money for that. If that's what we need to do, we need to find money for that. If we have to go into our pocket to dig deeper and get that money, we should. But we shouldn't do it at the expense of taking care of the tennis courts that people want to use, because that's one of the services that people feel they get for their taxes. You know, it's hard for me to say that the tennis courts are more important than figuring out what we're going to do with the center building, but I feel to take that away is taking away something that it's meaningful to enough people that it demonstrates that we as a board hear them, understand it, and are reacting to it. So that's what I'll offer from that perspective.
Mika, for this 61,000, will that remediate the courts enough to buy us time? Like, we think this is gonna fix them for the next 5 years? I mean,
About 5 years. That's your number is a good number. It's about 5 years.
I'll tell you, the tennis courts are built on
Yeah.
they're built on a water table is very high in that area.
It should be for more.
And so they crack more frequently than they should.
has the
And-
ice rink on top of that had any impact?
No, we've been doing them, this is, since I've been here, this is probably the fourth, maybe time. I've been here about a little over 20 years.
And is
It's
this
probably the
just
fourth
a
time we've done this.
patchwork, like
It
repair?
is.
Right.
It is just
For
repair.
$61,000?
They fill the cracks and they have
That's
this
wild.
teeth and the
You should see what
paint.
they spent at Amity on theirs.
I also asked the company to take a look at
Was it
what
repair?
it would cost to upgrade the courts at the country club, to see if maybe we could find a way to bring people to the country club that's positive.
So Mika, should we
idea.
do this now? And if that's a possibility? I mean,
Well, that's the only consideration from my perspective, Sheila.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I don't see anything being done that's going to disturb that for at least 2 to 3 years in terms of how building work goes.
Right.
So I do think that's one of the other reasons I feel almost like we should do it, is to get some usage out of it, because there's a good possibility if we build something over there, it will impact tennis courts.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm confused. So this 61 includes some repairs at those courts on Woodfield?
No,
Okay,
no,
it does
quite
not.
the contrary. No,
Okay.
what I was gonna say, and I'm sorry I didn't finish my thought, was that the cost to do that was close to $900,000. So to give you, there's 6
Yeah,
courts
that
there.
puts it in
That's close to
perspective.
what it
But I mean, those are, that's doing everything almost from scratch, putting all new fencing,
It's like-
the whole deal, but it's an extraordinary amount of money from my perspective. So in this case, I just felt like, yeah, you know, in light of what we learned today about the possibility of putting up a new building, that's possible area, and that could extend there, which would mean we would have to look at creating new, which is one of the reasons I did what I did. But we would have to look at creating some other space for the tennis courts.
Yeah. But if it's built on difficult terrain, maybe that's an appropriate
Maybe
thing
that's
to
not
do.
a bad thing. Maybe
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing, exactly.
Rather than this.
But again,
Yeah.
you know, if we wait, then it becomes less worth it, for lack of a better way to put it.
Is there, does this price reflect the best way to do that now then? If we're thinking this is possibly a short-term solution?
As far as Adam Parsons is concerned, Tony, would you agree that?
He would, yeah, that this is a, probably a 5-year, you know,
Fix.
life to this.
And is there, okay.
Go on.
We wouldn't want to do anything more long-term because we may be relocating
Right.
them at some point, so there,
Right.
we wouldn't want to invest in it.
Right, right.
But I also feel we don't want to neglect it, it's only going to get worse.
Right.
And then
Right.
more expensive to repair should we not have to cite for
Right.
another building.
And further tax dollars, we've already, you know, there's issues with the pool, and I think you're right. People feel like for their tax, this is one of the services in town that we provide.
Gets a lot of use, yeah.
Yeah.
This is it's certainly used year-round, and I'd say this is an immediate quality of life issue that we can address.
Along the
Maybe
lines
use
of
a
strategic
strategic plan, Tom?
So, what has changed, because we did make a decision not to fund it in the capital budget, but I think I'm hearing that something changed, right? So the conditions
things.
got worse?
Two things change. Well, yes, they did give.
I think our awareness of the conditions got
Oh,
worse.
yeah, we had a more pointed awareness, but
Okay.
also there was money available. There's last year's money available. This is contingency money. So that's the other thing that changed.
Yeah,
If there-
and we
if this
did-
wasn't available, we're not
We
having the
weren't sure
discussion.
of the,
Yeah, and we did fund a few things.
we weren't
Correct.
sure of how the winter was gonna go, we weren't
Right.
sure if we were gonna need money for more overtime, or
Yeah,
a number of things.
and the alternative, if we don't spend that money here, this just goes
Goes
into
to
the
fund balance, correct.
Right, so I think I agree that we should spend it.
So, for purposes we can continue discussion, but I'd like to make the motion to approve the funding request 2324-35 for $61,000 to repair cracks and repaint the tennis court on Center Road.
And we can continue the discussion.
Just thought I'd have the motion out there.
Do we know when the work would be done by?
That's an interesting question, Andrea. I don't know if Adam's given you any specific information on
He
that.
has not,
Tony?
no.
But it's interesting. That was one of the questions I asked. He can't tell us because obviously this is a time of year where
They're
it's,
used.
most of the, when they're used, one, but a lot of companies, this is when they do their work, because you do it in the summer, similar to paving. So it's, so no, we don't know specifically when it can be done, but if we want to modify that, so that if he says, well, it can't be done until next April, in which case we can,
Would we lose the ability to spend this money because it's associated with fiscal?
So
a
no,
certain
so what'll happen
fiscal year?
is, nope, what'll happen is if you transfer the money into this tennis court maintenance line, that becomes a capital account. Capital accounts roll from year to year.
Okay.
So should in 2 or 3 months you decide, yeah, we don't really want to do the tennis court maintenance because it's going to be next spring and we'd rather spend it on something else, at that point it'll be a multi-year fund and you can transfer it for another purpose.
Thank you
And
for that.
if it's
That's
already in
good to know.
capital, then architectural fees for
Right.
center building, right there.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
any other discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Appreciate the discussion.
Okay, next is the cupola. So we went out to bid for a cupola repair that you did the funding for at the last meeting. And we received 3 bids. As you can see, the bids are wide-ranging. And we've done Brad has done a scope review with, and has discussed extensively with the low bidder, which is GL Capasso from New Haven, and that's for $63,300. And he would recommend, and I would also recommend awarding the bid to GL Capasso. The only wild card or variable in this is, I believe the budget's at $75,000, and we're just not sure how much wood rot exists up there and how much wood needs to be replaced. That's the only variable at the moment.
Do you recall who contracted the work to build it initially?
I don't. The cupola?
Yeah.
No, I
quite
have
some
no
time
idea.
ago.
It was a long time ago.
1929.
I'm sorry?
1929.
1929?
Yeah, we're not talking about the gazebo. We're talking about the top of
The
the
top of
center.
the center
you.
building.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I was thinking about
They probably are
the
right.
sound green. This is for the center building
The
cupola.
at the top,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
There's some wood rot there,
It's
too.
not even 9
Will they-
o'clock yet. How am I mixing this up?
Replace the wood with, with,
Beck.
Longer lasting material?
PVC?
Composite?
Right,
Composite?
Yeah, composite or something, I mean, they do that with a lot of things.
So
Yeah.
it is a historic building.
I'm not sure.
It's in our
Right.
historic district, so.
I'm not sure that's if that's the plan. I
Does
think it
this
may be.
have to go to 824?
They're basically gonna scrape and
They're just repairing.
repaint, yeah.
So no.
No, okay.
So if one day you'll see scaffolding going all the way up to the top of the building, that's what it'll
Which
be
is part
for.
of the cost.
Right, that's a big part of the cost.
I'll make the motion to award the center cupola repair bid to GL Capazzo Inc. for $63,000.
Second.
$63,300.
$63,300, thank you.
Okay.
Further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Unanimous? The tax records grant.
This is a grant that we apply for every year. It's pretty much, you probably recognize this grant, Sheila, from your years on the board.
I do.
And Stephanie uses this to restore records, and I believe she's using it towards her project that we funded partially last month, which was for tax books. And so this is the grant portion of that project. It's essentially you apply for it and you generally get it.
So I'll make the motion to designate Town Clerk Stephanie Ciarleggio as the applicant for the grant funding of $5,500 to preserve old tax record books.
Second?
Additional discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. All right, that
Okay.
takes us to our last item on our agenda for tonight. It's the board and commission discussion and appointments. I'll start with the discussion portion of this. As I mentioned earlier, I would like to start a schedule for specific boards and commissions to meet with us either once or twice a year to provide us input and give us information as to what they're working on and give us an opportunity to also advise them as to what we might want them to work on in different projects of the like. So, and this is in place of our liaison program, more or less. One suggestion that was also made was that in preparation for their time to meet with us, they present prior to our meeting their written report, so that we have an opportunity to kind of look at it and have some questions and have a better dialogue between us rather than just reacting to what they're saying. So I believe there was
Yeah, you guys should have
Okay.
where you had me break it biannual and annual for review in the boards and commissions.
I don't remember off the top of my head, and I'm not looking at it right now in terms of 2030 being on there.
It's in your folder too.
Thank you.
2030
is on
is
there.
on there.
Yeah, okay, good.
But
Good.
can you help me understand, is this a time, like a list in order of when they'll be
No.
No,
This is just
no.
a-
It's most likely alphabetical as
Okay.
I went through all the boards and commissions. This is just a section off of which ones you think the board might think you would want to come in biannually, which ones you think you want to start with an annual, and then go from there.
What you're seeing is for discussion purposes.
Okay.
It's for us to discuss this, but it's just
Why?
listing them, not in any particular order. The only thing, as Allison said, is agriculture, maybe not, they don't meet all the time, so maybe once a year is enough. Versus, versus COOPOP that we might want to see twice a year.
And to be clear, this wouldn't preclude any commission or board from asking to come forth to the board
Absolutely
for
not.
whatever reason.
Correct.
Okay.
Or it wouldn't preclude us from saying, you know what, next month we want to hear from
Okay.
a particular commission. But this is just something I'd like to put on the schedule, put on the agenda, so we know ahead of time that we're gonna meet with. And it would be something that I'm hopeful that we can do this within 15 minutes to half an hour, or take an hour for 3 of them, type of thing.
Right, that's why they're probably alphabetical, that way the
They are.
board might decide, you could probably strategically choose
Yesterday.
3 that might fill an hour, or 2 that might fill an hour on a biannual schedule.
Keeping in mind that
Right.
We have 12 meetings a year.
That's what I'm saying,
Okay,
so
and there-
you gotta
and we've
divide them
got-
up.
We've got a number of, and if we're gonna meet with some of them
I mean,
twice a
at
year.
this rate, I think you guys are at 24
You know,
for a year.
and all of this is open for us to discuss. It's like, I'm not saying we need
One
to
of
meet
them
with them
8 hours.
twice a year, but, you know, or we may want to reduce the number that we meet twice a year to 5. You know, that type of thing there.
Sorry, we're getting distracted by the folder,
Um,
file structure.
No, that's fine.
Why, can you help me, why library commission twice a year?
Doesn't necessarily be, only because we consider them to be a primary,
Service provider?
correct,
Okay.
correct. But
But that might be one to go to annual, it's up to the,
That's
Yeah, I mean,
exactly
I
right.
could see that one going to an annual level unless, you know, there are hot topics to be addressed.
I found those
Agreed.
things, because I always
I
worry.
agree with you.
This is on.
You know, or we could go through a cycle where they all present at least once, and then I think from that presentation, we might be able to get a better idea of, do we need to hear from them again during the year, or is this something, this is a once a year? Because we're also gonna hear from them during budget season as well with their presentations. I think this is a great way to connect, to see how those programs
Yep.
are being implemented throughout the year.
That's a good point.
That is a-
Keeping in mind, you hear from the department in terms of, it shouldn't be that much of a difference, but you're hearing from the department heads for the budget versus the chairs of the commissions for this.
Good
They
point.
usually
Yes,
come.
thank you.
They usually come at the same time, though. A lot of
But they
times
always
they'll
come
give a
together, generally the big
Yeah.
ones come together, correct.
But it's good to see how, you know, what we're funding in the budget, how those programs are being implemented throughout the year, what the response to those programs, because I think that helps
Well,
guide.
yeah, especially where it interacts with our work, which I guess the strategic plan is meant to, yeah, so some of them maybe are more called for in the strategic plan than others, right? So economic development, we were just talking about how we really do need to hear from them.
Right. I like Maria's idea of scheduling each of these for the first meeting, is identifying when we want to schedule these for the first meeting, and based on what we get back, and obviously giving them time to prepare for that meeting, and then based on that, the input we receive and how that goes, we determine whether we want to meet them a second time within the year, within the fiscal year.
How do you think the various building committees might interact with this, right? Because, so for example, the Board of Police Commissioners and whatever recommendation we're going to hear next about future PD, maybe you put those together at the same meeting, so they don't have to come out twice, right?
No, very, very much so, that's.
And then the old firehouse, I know we have them, they're gonna be
Community
scheduled
center.
soon, right? So that, maybe that's when recreation and human
Right.
services come, and library, they're all three of them.
We'll be hearing from the community center next month. So I don't know that, for example, recreation is giving them commission enough time for them to provide us.
Is Andrea's on both those, right?
She
Andrea
is.
Weinstein,
She
right?
is.
And there's someone from library and someone from human services?
On the
that?
commission, on the committee, the
Yeah.
building committee?
No, maybe not.
No, it's, I don't think so. Because it's only
Small,
three.
small
It's a very
committee, small and mighty.
It's,
it's Tom. The Community and Cultural Center, Tony, it's Tom,
It's Bob,
and
Bob.
Bob,
Bob
oh, it's
Tucker.
Bob, it's Bob
Bob.
Tucker,
Bob
And
Tucker.
Sandy.
Sandy
Sandy,
and
Andrea.
Andrea.
and Andrea Weinstein, yeah.
But, we can reach out to Andrea tomorrow and see if she can do something for next month. We can have we can have recreation and that building and come in at the same
They're
time.
planning to come next month, right?
The
Yeah.
building committee is
Right, yeah.
planning to come, so maybe we can have recreation
Yeah.
also, give us an update as to what's going on.
Good idea.
Might be a good time, it's summertime, there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
So we can have, see if John and Andrea can participate in that.
For August meeting, I'm just
For the
picking up
August meeting, yes,
Recreation.
yes.
I'm just mindful that September is some sort of deadline for TPZ on their POCD, I think. They're trying
Yeah.
to get input then, so maybe their September. I don't know.
Well, and TPC's updating regulations,
Yep.
right? And I feel I would like to have a little bit more transparency through that process and a better understanding. You know, talk about the need for an executive summary. It's hard to review a 201-page draft of suggested revisions.
So we're looking at them for September, is what you're suggesting?
Well, have a public hearing I think that would have to be August, because their regular meeting in September is intended to receive the SCROG consultants' feedback on the revise, and it's unclear to me if they're having public comment or not, but that.
They're leaving
is-
the public hearing open,
Okay.
and, I mean,
They left the public
They left it
hearing.
open,
right,
right? And
they
so-
don't have to close it on their meeting the first week of September. We
Okay.
could ask them to keep it open until they come to us at our September meeting if August doesn't work for them and they'd rather come to September.
We've
I don't know if
got,
they'd
we
do
just
that.
said recreation in August.
Right, so TPZ in September, but maybe let them know, would you consider keeping your public hearing open?
But Andrea's indicating maybe September is too late because of the,
Because,
keep it open.
yeah, so either or, I don't,
You could keep it open. Although they've been working on,
Mika, would it be appropriate for
Months.
them, could they provide at that time or any time an executive summary of their changed regs? Not like of the
will-
cleanup stuff, but of the,
we'll reach out to the chair, the co-chair, and Chris Sullivan
okay,
and see what they can or can't do,
okay,
you know, in terms of what will,
thank you.
and it will include a question as to whether the public hearing, is there a big problem if the public hearing is kept open? So August may be covered. Rather than going over and taking time right now, what I'll do is, in light of the way we want to approach this, we'll put together a draft recommendation as to who, when, and we'll send it to everyone for review and finalize it at the next meeting.
sounds good.
All right?
I just am realizing, is the Board of Finance on here? And does it need to be?
We meet jointly with them a
Yeah.
lot. when we
Yeah,
get
I
to the
think,
budget.
I think that was I think that's what Tony said, the Board of Finances, and Woodbridge
We're
Board of
so
Ed
involved.
isn't on there, cause
She comes
Vonda
every month,
comes
yeah.
every month, everybody get updates, so I think because you guys.
Well, and we're having a tri-board in November.
Interact so much.
Watch
That
that, yeah.
makes sense.
And-
Well,
So we
late
kind of-
November, early December is the.
Yeah, so we already have the Woodbridge
We do
Board
have the
of Ed on.
draft.
What we don't have, though, is the Amity Board of Ed, and we don't have the Amity Board of Ed come, or the superintendent come either, so I would like to see the Amity Board on this list.
That's interesting.
They tend to, Board
They
of
meet
Ed
with us.
members, and definitely the superintendent, are attending meetings in Orange a lot more frequently, so maybe if we invite
They
them.
attend with us for the budget, so they're, once a year,
Yeah.
the superintendent does.
Yeah.
does-
Well, they go to their annual town meeting and present. So,
We'll take a look at it.
I
Go
would,
ahead, Marie. Hmm?
I know technically, so biannual board and commission reports, I believe Housing Committee and Sustainability are still ad hoc.
They are.
So just another opportunity to plug in our legitimizing those if we want to.
Something,
Would that be ordinance?
That would be
it is part of
ordinance.
ordinance. Ordinance is also, because along with that, GATV has not really had a commission, active commission for quite some time. So we were looking to revise it, and we certainly had individuals who seemed to be interested in participating again. And we started to rethink that and wonder if it's better for us to retain it as a department and just kind of work with them as a department as opposed to as a commission. And so, along with another consideration for the board, and another part of the discussion today, is do we consider possibly decommissioning the GATV commission and just operating it as a department? And certainly would welcome some input from your perspective on that.
So I was the person who brought it to ordinance to have it created. I was chairing it as an ad hoc. And we proposed it with bylaws. And the bylaws give a pretty lengthy explanation as to what the role of the commission is as opposed to having it be a department. And importantly, and we picked this up from Orange Government Access Television, you want to consider retaining a commission so that they're the ones making decisions and it's not employees who are being instructed by staff, management, to do things. Just for the sake of public transparency, that the commission is the buffer in between and it's making the decisions. So there can't be something happening that the public's not aware of behind the scenes that is influencing what is or is not recorded, what is or is not shown, how frequently it's shown, that kind of thing. Now, in the age of live casting and YouTube, there's much less of an emphasis on editing videos. We used to have to record and then edit them down, and you could remove things in edit if there wasn't a commission that said, no, we don't do that. But those are the kinds of things that are contemplated in the bylaws, so I would just urge, if we are thinking about making a change, that we look through those bylaws and see. And maybe ask in Orange, maybe they've also gone away from it, I don't know. It is hard to get people who want to serve on this commission.
I was liaison to that last year, or for 2.5 years, and it was the most boring experience.
That's why it's hard to get people to serve.
And, when I say department, keep in mind what we're talking about is like town clerk. We don't have a town clerk commission. We don't have an assessor commission. So it would be part of the function of, of management to oversee what they do and how they do it. And certainly the employees we have had, kudos, because they work well. They still, they're still very active in terms of trying to see if there's grant opportunities and different technology that we need and things of that nature. So that's one of the reasons we feel it could be. I didn't realize about the bylaws. I'm glad you brought it up because we'll take a look at it and see, and we'll also look at Orange and see what we can do there.
Right.
So.
And I think the other rationale was we all have good motives. We would never unduly influence anything, but you do really want to set this up for future people to, sometimes it's good to have those bylaws and those restrictions.
Understood.
So.
Understood. Thank you. Andrea, your thought in regards, there's a couple of committees that we will be looking to see about modifying. We're also trying to, obviously, we're trying to not necessarily grow the government too much.
Yeah, I
Grow our
understand.
government too much. So, so there's much more discussion that we can have on this. So, thank you. I did want to take care of making sure we get the reports from the commissions and we work on that. So we'll move forward with that. And additionally, there are some commission appointments that need to be cared for. We can start, I just want to make sure more. Okay. I think we can go to nominations.
Yeah, we have Coopop. I'll make the motion to nominate Aaron Goldberg for an appointment on Coopop, the Commission for Use of Publicly Owned Property, for a 4-year term ending December 31st, 2027.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Discussion. What I'd like to mention is that, just so everyone's aware, is that Coopop is 6 members. It's currently, it's got 3 Democrats and 2 unaffiliates, and Aaron Goldberg is a Democrat. Just so we know as far as the minority representation is there. So, any additional questions or comments? All in favor?
I'm sorry, I do.
Okay.
Have a question / comment. So in reviewing resumes, I know nominating committees, at least certainly the Republican nominating committee, I assume also the Democrat, does their due diligence to find people with relevant experience for the specific boards and commissions to which they're being put forth. And sincerely appreciate Aaron's interest in this. And I just would like to understand, after reviewing the resume, the relevant experience this person has to bring to Coupop. I saw all great experience with data engineering and software. And are we seeing that skill set being applicable in Coupop? And if so, can you help me to understand
Yes,
how?
his ability in terms of research and his thoroughness in terms of any topic that he takes in is one of the primary one of the primary skill sets that Coupop requires. Coupop is truly a working type of a group. There's a lot of you spend time at the town clerk's office looking at different land records and things of that nature. His meticulousness and attention to detail and simple natural curiosity in terms of finding out as deeply as he can about information is something that I found to be extraordinary and very well suited for what they look for at Coupop. So I appreciate your question because he's very well qualified in terms of technical, but additionally he's lived in numerous different places. He carries a very diverse type of perspective with regard to land use, and particularly as municipal land use because of the different places that he's lived, West Coast, Hawaii, other areas as well. And he brings his personality, his tenor, his tone is very conducive to working in a group environment, and he's done it before. He brings a lot to the table along those lines.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
think in the past we discussed nominees drafting a little blurb about their
not a bad
interests,
idea.
just for this, I think, exact reason,
Yep.
to help contextualize that. So I appreciate you doing that.
And I didn't mention it because I didn't want it to sway you, but you'll find him to be quite the conservationist. or at least very, very interested in renewable energies and things of that nature, and taking care. He'll probably be one of the first people I know who's truly completely off, like completely carbon neutral. So
Well, I look forward to meeting him.
yeah, I think you'll enjoy him.
So, Mika, I also had another question just about the vetting process, and not specific to any one of these candidates, because I can't remember which one it was, but just looking at the resume prompted me to remember that there was a time when folks were, if they had like home-based businesses and things like that, that someone just reached out to make sure that they were either, if they needed to be registered with the town as running a home-based, and on the tax rolls or whatever it was. But I don't know if is that something that we could, well,
certainly can. It's certainly something we can do, and it certainly seems like it's reasonable to do.
right, just
You know,
give people
so,
a heads up,
yeah.
especially when they're new to town. I guess the other thing that just prompted in me is there used to be ethics forms that everyone, when you started on a
They're
board or
still-
commission, yeah, so I don't know if they've gone out.
Or no, it's I'm familiar with conflict of interest forms, not
Yeah,
necessarily ethic forms,
yeah.
but
And
conflict of interest.
They used to
forms.
come in the packet when you got
Right.
appointed. I don't know if
Right.
they still do.
Yep.
Yeah.
They still
Okay.
do?
Yep.
So yeah, so there's
I haven't filed one in years, so.
I was just gonna say, did we? Did we?
Yeah, we're supposed to, yeah.
We did?
Everyone is supposed to.
Good to know.
Is that only when you're new though?
maybe
Yeah.
maybe because I don't know.
I will take myself down to the town clerk and get myself a new form, I
Yeah.
guess.
That's
It's been a long time.
but we'll confirm
I'll find
that
out.
it has been a long time, and I
That's
don't
been a
remember.
while.
Yeah.
And as I think my first reaction was, geez, I don't remember either.
Yeah, did you?
But as I think back, yes, I did.
Okay.
So.
Great.
Fire Commission,
Wait,
No,
I,
you
no,
gotta,
we
you
have-
gotta
I'm
motion in
sorry.
a second. Whoa.
any additional discussion on this? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries.
Next up, we have the Fire Commission. I'll make a motion to nominate Nick Valsamis for an appointment to the Fire Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2025.
Is there a second? Very good, thank you. Just again, in terms of starting the discussion. There's currently 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans on this 5-member board, and Nick Felsamis is a Republican. Now, full disclosure, and the way that I regard these is, and the way that it seems as if it's been regarded in the past, is if the Democrats, and I'll be very candid, if the Democrats put somebody up, whether they were a Republican or not, it was a Democratic type of, considered to be a Democratic type of a slot. In this case, so from this perspective, it is what it is. So, but from my perspective, if there's an opportunity for an individual from a Democratic side, we'll look at it, we'll identify it. In some cases, we'll do a U, some cases we'll do a D, in some cases we'll do an R. In this case, it happens to be an R.
So when the term expires, does that mean that it would be the Democrats' nominee to replace?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Are there any,
Well, actually, I was in my research, if you don't mind me answering. So, as terms, people resign or people leave boards and commissions, it all comes down to minority representation. So, the specific seat itself doesn't belong, or like you said, like it's not a Republican or Democratic nominee, the actual person's seat itself, it's all about keeping the balance
Thank you.
of minority representation,
clarify.
if that makes sense.
So
if this one,
if balance is retained, should Nick get appointed and resign, let's say, if balance is retained, then it would be a Democrat.
correct.
If balance is not, it would be a Republican.
In this case, it would be, if Nick were to resign, it would be a Democratic slot to fill, so to speak, from a minority representation standpoint.
But who nominates the person is not relevant. The statute only says that
Correct.
the majority party gets a certain number.
Correct.
And the others have to be of not the majority party.
Yes.
It doesn't really say that the majority party or the minority party nominates those people, because, we just know that hasn't always been the case, so.
Yeah,
Understood.
regardless of who makes the nomination, the only determination is the vote of the board.
Correct.
So,
Right, yes.
Right.
And
You know.
keeping the minority representation.
Right, and so in the short-term memory, it was always Democrats making appointments one way or the other, but prior to that, it was Republicans doing the same
Correct.
thing.
Correct.
So
Good point.
it is, whoever is controlling the board gets that vote.
And we will continue to make an effort to make sure that things are done in such a way as it best suits our town. So. Any other discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries.
And we have the EMS Commission, so I'll make the motion to nominate Ed Manning for an appointment to the EMS Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2025.
Second.
Currently 5 members on EMS, 1 Democrat, two unaffiliates, and 1 Republican. Ed Manning is an affiliate, voted. You've seen his resume. I'll just add that this is one of those quiet gem commissions. They meet, they do what they do, and the service that's being provided by what they oversee is a very undervalued. If you not, I don't want to say undervalued. I don't think people understand exactly what they're doing and how good of a service our EMS services are. We do have a paramedic who's available, readily available on a 7x24-hour basis here in town, and paramedic is the highest form of mobile user as opposed to an EMT. Great people, great to have them, but the paramedic can do things that the EMT cannot. That they would have to, somebody might have to be transported to a hospital to get the kind of care that the paramedic can provide at the home. And our response times have been astounding with the service that we've had so far. They've been very, very well. They've been very, very good. I just, since we're talking about the commission, I just thought I'd throw that in there and make sure people understood that. So,
Also, Mika, they meet quarterly, is that
Yes.
EMS, right?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
that's another option maybe for the
at some
government
point in
access.
time, yeah, give them an opportunity to let us know what they're,
Yeah.
what's being accomplished.
Mhm.
So, any additional comments, discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Got there before 9 o'clock, folks.
Motion to adjourn.
Let's go.
Second.
Okay. 8:56.
We are adjourned.